I got to be honest, man. I didn't feel immortal like back in the day. It was the vocals really. I'm a fan now, and I remember thinking they had the coolest name. Immortal. Like their T-shirts looked awesome,
Mhm.
and I checked it out, and I was like, oh, this is cool, but like, man, I can't get behind the vocals. And then I just kind of throughout the '90s didn't really get into them so much. And then later on, though, as I got deeper and deeper into, Immortal, and people kept being like, oh man, you got to listen to like, more of this stuff. I started, getting, I guess it was an acquired taste with the vocals, you know what I mean? And now I'm a fan, now I definitely like Immortal. But back in the day, I remember being turned off by the vocals for Immortal. So, I don't share the enthusiasm, I guess.
Well, the reason why I threw it to you is because my number 4 is Immortal Battles in the North.
Greetings, friends. Welcome to episode 152 of Into the Necrosphere. On this week's show, I am joined by my fellow horsemen of the podcast Apocalypse, Mike Hill and Mike Scondotto, co-hosts of the excellent Necromaniacs podcast, and you will also recognize them from their musical endeavors. Mike Hill, of course, leads Tombs and Scorpion Throne, and Mike Scondotto is in a band called Inhuman. We got together to discuss our favorite black metal releases of the 1990s, what many consider to be the golden age of black metal. And as you can imagine, there were a lot of opinions, some parallels and crossover, but really, really great time had by all, and I am sure you guys are going to thoroughly enjoy this conversation. If you do like black metal, also pay attention, because on October the 31st, my friend Cheyenne of the Iblis Manifestations podcast and the band Trivax finally unleashes his new EP upon the world. The EP is called The Serpent's Gaze. It will be delivered courtesy of Cult Never Dies. This is the title track off of that record. That was The Serpent's Gaze by Trivax off the EP of the same name, due for release on October the 31st via Cult Never Dies. So great that somebody has picked this up, and having heard snippets of what you can expect from future Trivax releases, I can tell you right now, this is just the tip of the iceberg, my friends. Also, I'm busy working through the logistics of getting Cheyenne to come up to my place, or potentially for us to meet somewhere to do an in-person. So hopefully that will be happening before the end of the year. Always great catching up with him. But as ever, I will post the link to the Trivax Bandcamp in the description of the podcast. If you want to go in there and pre-order, buy yourself some merch or buy yourself some of Trivax's older music, make sure that you do so. And if you do, then remind Cheyenne that you heard of Trivax on Into the Necrosphere. If you're new to the podcast, this is your cue to hit the subscribe button on your platform of choice, be that YouTube, Spotify, Stitcher, Apple, Amazon, or wherever else you consume podcast content from. If you want to support the show, follow me on social media. Check out my merch on the Into the Necrosphere Teespring store. And of course, if the spirit moves you to do so, leave me a 5-star review on Spotify, Apple. Those sorts of things don't take a lot of time, but they really, really make a difference. Also, coming up later in the show, I'm not going to do a review this week because this conversation that I've got with the Mikes, Hill, and Scondotto is already pretty long. But the last time that I had a long episode and I skipped on the news rant segment, the legions made their discontent very, very, very palpable. So I decided I absolutely cannot let any of you guys down again. There will definitely be a news rant at the end of this, and maybe next week I'll do more of a review roundup, because there's been quite a few really good stuff that's come out in October. So maybe we'll talk through a couple of those, and we can do a deep dive on some of the very best. So that'll be coming your way next week. I will also next week have Keith Rich of Druids. Originally he was scheduled for this week, but I've decided to change around the scheduling a little bit. Druids, of course, great band out of Iowa. You guys really responded well to the review I did for their new record, Shadow Work, a couple of weeks ago, and figured I needed to get somebody from the band on the podcast. So, and then outside of that, I've got a couple of other things in the offing. The gentlemen from Black Lava are hopefully going to be on the show in the next couple of weeks. And I've got a few other things that are simmering away. But there's about 8 more episodes until we get to the end of the year. And I get on a plane and I say, see ya to this fucking island for at least 4 weeks. And then I will be back in January. And, in January, we'll start talking about some of the best releases of 2022. I always wait a while before I do those. This year, or not this year, but next year's best of will have 3 episodes. So I'm going to do a top 30, and I've got guests in mind for all of them. No surprise, it'll be Mike Hill that does the top 10 with me. But there's a lot coming your way. And if you have decided to check out Into the Necrosphere for the first time, you have my heartfelt thanks, even more so if you are one of the weekly faithful. And that weekly faithful seems to be growing, which is absolutely awesome. So, friends, one final reminder, do check out my fellow horsemen of the podcast Apocalypse. On Monday, Brandon Legion brings you Horrorwolf 666. I'm, of course, dropping episodes every Tuesday. Mike Hill drops the knowledge with Everything Went Black on a Wednesday. My guests this week, the gang from Necromaniacs, are with you every Thursday. And then on a Sunday, you've got Carl Hykara delivering the Devil's Sermon on the Lord's Day with Solnox. So you have got most of your week covered with high-quality, high-caliber entertainment by a bunch of non-woke, intelligent bucks in the prime of their life. Speaking of which, you're about to see 3 of us in action right now for the next 2 hours as we count down our favorite black metal releases of the 1990s.
Yeah, like I was saying, I've been following on from the conversation you guys had about Dharma on Necromaniacs. I've really been getting into that, and Mike S, you are absolutely right. It's like you literally. There are points throughout that show where you literally just sit there holding your breath, and it's like I know everything that happened. I don't think I've actually shared this much on the podcast, but I was dead set on becoming a criminal profiler when I was young. I'd started looking into what that meant from a study perspective, all of that sort of stuff. And there was actually a book by Robert Resler called I think it's called Whoever Fights Monsters or Who Fights Monsters. And I read that book, and that was the book that kind of made me, or brought my plans to become a criminal profiler to a screeching halt, because he's one of the guys that really pioneered the whole concept of criminal profiling. But he talks in the book about the toll that took on him. He's actually based on the Bill Tench character in Mindhunter is actually based on Robert Ressler. He talks about alcoholism and the effect that it had on personal relationships and stuff. And I kind of had to take stock and step back and go, could I sit in a room and relate to somebody like Jeffrey Dahmer or like Ted Bundy in a way that's meaningful, and that where you can have a meaningful conversation? And then you marry that up to the idea that my idea of crime prevention is more closely aligned to Judge Dredd than it is to anything else. So it's like, and I thought to myself, this is probably going to have to be a passing interest for me for the rest of my life.
On a related note, I was almost NYPD. I took the exam.
Yeah.
I got a 94 on it. Yeah. I have the little piece of paper to show it. And at the time, I was just about 30 or 31, and I was living with my girlfriend. I was not working, like I was in between jobs. And the starting salary was so low, I would have had to have moved back home, and I refused to move back home. So that was one of the reasons I didn't go ahead with it. So I was very interested in being a cop at one point in my life, and it almost happened, but it did not happen. They even called me up, actually, because they saw the score and they saw that I didn't do my follow-up end. So there you go.
Blows my mind, man. It blows my mind that cops get paid so little. And I always had in my mind, I was always of the thought that pay them more and try to get better guys as cops. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it was a weird thing.
Make it attractive, make it attractive to people with some sort of skill. You know what I mean? That was my biggest criticism of cops, because at my younger days, I spent a lot of times running in with cops, and I was really like, man, these guys are such fucking idiots, man. And I always thought, not on some like anti-authoritarian trip, but I was like, why don't they pay these guys more and just get a higher quality of person as a cop?
Well, there was a conversation had when the whole defund the police thing flared up, where they were saying, well, actually, what you should be doing is putting more money into it, because you can spend that money on better training. You can spend the money on exactly what you just said now, getting a better caliber of candidate, which is not to denigrate the police right now, but it ultimately it kind of is telling when you would have to have moved back in with your parents, just to become a police officer. Yeah. Which is insane. I mean, I manage people in America, so I have an idea of salaries and stuff now, and I kind of also know, when I hear some of the money that teachers get paid or that police get paid, you're like starting salary $30,000 or $40,000. You go, who the fuck is living on that?
Yeah, you can't live on a salary like that. It's impossible.
No.
Here, Yeah.
So. But like I said, the whole criminal profiling thing that came to a screeching halt, but it hasn't. I'm kind of with Mike H in the sense that I have got to a point where I'm quite selective in what kind of true crime I absorb. I've really enjoyed the Conversations with a Killer series on Netflix, and there's certain things that I'll watch, but a lot of it I won't. Partly because I know a lot of the psychology behind what goes on, so a lot of it to me, like when there's a killer in a movie or whatever, and they've got this grand master plan, it just rings so hollow, because as you see from Dahmer, there is no plan. No. There's no fucking grand scheme behind it. It's not some criminal mastermind doing these things. It's a lunatic. But I mean, this Dahmer series, Jesus Christ, and if Evan Peters doesn't clean up at every award show next year, it will be a disgrace. It would be like if Daniel Day-Lewis hadn't won the Oscar for Daniel Plainview. I mean, it's like if you look at somebody and you go, that is the part that man was born to play. I'm gobsmacked by how good he is in this.
I don't think he'll get it. He'll get it because that's just how life is. But hopefully he does.
True.
Yeah.
Well, one thing we'll do very quickly, and then we'll go into the purpose of this episode, which, to remind everybody, is 666. So the countdown of our six favorite black metal albums from the 1990s. I stole the idea from Mike S because I heard you talk about it on Necromaniacs, and I was driving to the gym listening to it, because I normally, when Necromaniacs comes out, I'll say this is a compliment to you guys. That's like priority one. Like when I wake up on a Thursday morning, that's the first thing that goes on in the car.
Thank
and
you.
I listen to that when I'm at the gym. And I was like, when you said I'd love to do a podcast about the 90s, I was like, boom. There's a reason to get him on the podcast.
Go,
and why don't we get Mr. Hill on the show as well? Because there's so much fucking cool stuff to talk about, from that era. But before we did it, I did want to do a what you're watching, because that's one of the things I love most about Necromaniacs. Mike, Mike H, I should say. I know you watched Hellraiser last night.
I did, actually. I watched Hellraiser last night, and I gotta be honest, man. I have some opinions about it, and I don't think they're going to align with the overarching theme that a lot of people have about that show and that movie. And I got some opinions, man. That's all I'm going to say about it right now.
Some opinions that might be that might fly in the face of the mainstream convention, a little bit like your views on Prey.
Yeah, probably, and I mean, the thing is, I'm a huge Clive Barker fan, and I'm a huge fan of the original film. And I just like to have the storyline and the mythos of those characters approached in a very specific way. And none of the sequels have really hit that. And I have to say that I have have opinions about how the new incarnation of that film manifests, and I just it's not going to line up with everyone else's ideas, I think.
Yeah, I have not seen it yet, but I don't know if it's old age, but something I've picked up in movies. I don't know whether it's my imagination or whether it's true, but I feel a lot of movies shot post-pandemic or during and post-pandemic, they feel incredibly lifeless to me. And part of me thinks, like, I understand why that would have been, is because they wouldn't have been able to have the size crews on set that they had before. You wouldn't have been able to shoot on location like you did previously. You wouldn't have been able to have the number of extras on set that you might have been able to do before. But as a result, there's almost like a realism that's lacking in it. And it translates to the way some of the movies are edited. It feels like a lot of the editing in movies nowadays is like taken from the TikTok school of editing, where it feels very pieced together. It's not like you think of the greatest movies ever, and there's this natural flow and this like really great rhythm that the movie gets into. And a lot of modern movies, I would say, up until the most recent Batman, which really surprised me, I've not felt that flow. I've not felt that rhythm in a movie for a very, very long time. And it really bugs me. It takes me out of the movie completely.
Yeah, another big problem I had with it was just the characters in this thing and the way that they approached. There's this sort of generic vibe to all the characters in the movie, and if you're familiar with the original source material, if you're seeking the Le Marchand configuration, you're on the edge. You're like this edgy fringe person who just needs more and more experience, and that's typified by Sean Chapman as Frank. Frank is this guy who just, it's almost like his destiny to find this thing, and go into the next dimension of pure sensation, or what I mean? There's like a very desperate, edgy sort of vibe to the original films. And these like characters they have, especially, it's supposed to be dealing with drug addiction, and they could have done so much with that concept. They just did not push it. And that's my biggest criticism of the movie.
Mike, I guess you were about to say.
I was going to say, you was talking about how movies are a bit lifeless post-pandemic, and I kind of agree with you. The last really big movie I enjoyed was probably the Batman. I really like the Batman a lot. But before that, I would say like, the last Tarantino movie was probably the last mainstream kind of like big production movie that I really enjoyed, and that was literally at the end of 2019. That was literally right before the pandemic. It's almost like a line of demarcation for that movie, I feel like, in a weird way. But, hopefully things will change.
That movie is fucking incredible, though, and I've always loved and been very fascinated with the 70s, even though I was born in 1980. So whenever or not like 70s and the 60s, whenever I look at anything that's extremely well done from that era, it kind of makes me want to go back to that era or live in that era.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I thought, that movie's absolutely incredible. But yeah, you see it manifest in like, the roads are always empty, the neighbors always quiet. You even kind of saw it a little bit on Dharma, and I thought to myself, okay, well, it makes maybe a bit more sense here because it's a suburban environment and stuff like that. And I think they've masked that inability to be able to, shoot at the scale they were shooting at previously quite well. But like I said, in a lot of movies, it's just taken me out of it. And when it comes to stuff like Marvel movies and stuff like that, I can't watch it anymore. I can't deal with the same formula of, supervillain wants to destroy New York or destroy San Francisco or destroy the world, and then cue massive exploding buildings, and it's like, God damn it, man. Like, can we not just take this? Just take one character and go down a slightly different route, just a slightly different angle. Which is what was so cool about Batman. I don't know whether you picked this up, but I will definitely say the dude that did Batman clearly watched an awful lot of the Watchmen movie. Because like the way the narrative and all that sort of stuff, the voiceover, Batman talking and stuff like that is straight up Rorschach.
I can see that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
I had wished that he would go a little bit more Rorschach as well. Like that would also be cool if Batman just turns up the juice just a little bit.
So, we'll see, man. I want more patents than Batman. Yeah.
All right. So rules of the game. Number 1. The black metal record in question must have been released between 1990 and 1999. Rule number 2, it can't be the entire Burzum back catalog. Number 3, any opinion I disagree with, I will taunt and boo until my throat is sore. So,
oh no, this is going to be great.
All right, so let's start with Mr. Scondotto, your number 6.
My number 6 is a band that I really hope everyone is familiar with, but not everyone might be familiar with. And I love this record. This record gives me the chills since 1998 when it came out. And it is Dawn's Slaughter Song, Crown of Triarchy. The Swedish Dawn, I believe there was a German Dawn, but this is the Dawn that matters. Dawn from Sweden, unbelievable band. In the vein of Dissection, a little bit of death metal with their black metal, the melodic side of black metal. This band was kind of on fire between like 95 and 98. They were even poised to play America back in 1998, the big Milwaukee Metal Fest. They never made it here. And the band, by around 99, disappeared off the face of the earth. Enigmatic band, only to resurface in the past few years with apparently a new album being demoed right now and poised to come out next year, a follow-up to a 1998 record, which might be a black metal first. Are you guys familiar with Dawn?
I'm familiar with both Dawns, actually, the Swedish and the German Dawn.
I was just about to say, the rule of being taunted and booed until someone's throat is sore is about to backfire on me, because I don't know that record. Ooh. And this was kind of was going to be part of the fun of doing this, right? Is like picking up stuff that maybe we didn't know before. Though I'm starting to feel like my choices might be reasonably pedestrian by comparison, but
it's okay.
I do not know that. One comment that I will make. It's interesting, it's easy to forget if you weren't in the scene for a very long time. Like I got into black metal around 1994, 1995. And at that point, like there was a really distinct line between death metal and black metal. Like the two absolutely. Very rarely blurred. There was Sathanas and there were bands like that. There was, Dissection to a degree as well, had some of that death metal influence in it, but it wasn't done very often. It's interesting how that's evolved, where now it's like, there's a cluster of death metal, a cluster of black metal, and then there's this morass of convergence in the middle. I would say there's almost more. It's almost less likely now that you're going to see a black metal release coming out that doesn't have at least some degree of death metal influence in it. Than otherwise, than something that's kind of pure black metal, like the new Norgevel, for example. It almost sounded like the first time I listened to it. It's a phenomenal record, but the first time I listened to it, it's almost like Jesus. It's quite a traditional black metal record for 2022. But anyway, just a side comment. But as I said, I do not know Dawn.
I have to say, it came out on Necropolis Records, which was a very popular American black metal label in the 90s. Back in the 90s, probably one of the only places where you could get black metal for a while was either Full Moon Productions in Florida or from Necropolis Records distribution in California. Necropolis also was the label that brought Witchery to America. Remember the band Witchery? They had a moment back in the day. I could not suggest this record enough to listeners, to people who don't know who this band is. Dawn, Slaughter Sun, Crown of Triarchy. They have one other prior full length and one other EP. Century Media has the rights to all these records. They're all on Spotify and iTunes. I have befriended the singer and guitarist over the years on social media. That's how much of a fan I am. And this record you'll never forget it once you hear it. Jackie, I think you're going to like this band a lot.
I will, without a doubt, check it out. It was either Necropolis or it was Osmos that used to do in like all the Nuclear Blast catalogs that I would order music from. And I always found this fucking hysterical. I still do, because it's such a caveman thing to do. But like in the old days before political correctness, they used to do a full page ad in the Nuclear Blast catalog, and the big strap line at the top used to be "Not for pussies" in a red with exclamation.
Yes,
and I can't remember whether that was Osmos or whether that was Necropolis, but it was fucking funny either way.
I remember the visual. I can't remember what label it was. Yeah. But Necropolis was cool. I was doing college radio around this time, and I got packages from Necropolis, and I was always super stoked when that would happen, because it was always great shit.
Yeah. All right, Michael Hill, you're at number 6.
All right, so my number 6 is Fallen Angel of Doom by Blasphemy, the Canadian black metal. That came out August 1990. Okay, that's how old this record is, and I definitely did not get into this in 1990. I discovered this band because I was starting to dip my toe into harsh noise, stuff like White House and Merzbow and things, bands like that. And there was a couple of dudes that I knew. I worked at the Newbury Comics warehouse at the time, and they were like, these like real outsider sort of guys that were like, into serial killers, into noise, and they also were into like the really extreme black metal stuff because of the aesthetic and just the overall misanthropic sort of vibe. And they turned me on to Blasphemy, and that was the record I got into. And it was not until like maybe 97 that I actually heard this record. But at the time, I'd never heard anything like it. You could say it's that war metal, black metal, just over the top extremity with like very just like intense song titles, and even the names of the guys in the band, Traditional Sodomizer of the Goddess of Perversity. That's like the coolest name ever, right?
Yeah.
3 Black Hearts of Damnation and Impurity. Like, that's an awesome just name. That's like the drummer in the band. So that just the aesthetic, just like the stark black imagery, stark white imagery on a black background. That's a band that opened me up to that whole world, like Impiety, like bands like Conqueror and, Revenge and all that stuff, which came later on. But that was that was a very formative record for me. That's my number 6.
Awesome choice, Mike.
When did black metal start becoming like a big deal in the States? Because I would say in South Africa, it was like initially, because like we had our first democratic elections in 1994. Prior to that, the country was really closed off to a lot of the outside world. The metal that you got was typically pretty mainstream stuff. So it was like Metallica, Slayer, Pantera, that sort of thing. Then I I can't remember if it was All Blacks Distribution or some other distribution company started getting Roadrunner records into the country, so you could start getting stuff like that. And through tape trading, we picked up various other things, but it was really after 1994 that we started getting like international magazines and things like that. And black metal piqued my interest, following that extremely infamous Kerrang cover with, Varg on the front with a knife.
Right, 93.
The whole thing about church burnings and stuff like that. And, you kind of looked at it initially and you went, Jesus Christ, these guys are fucking psychos, because the scariest thing you're listening to at the time is maybe Sepultura or Slayer. But you kind of keep on being interested in what it's going to sound like. But it even then, for a couple of years on, it still stayed kind of a pretty limited preserve. It wasn't something that people were into in mass, or not into in mass, but like that the metal scene crowded around. Like the metal scene in South Africa was more interested in Flames and At the Gates and stuff like that. But if the few of us that had more obscure tastes would seek out other things, many of which we're going to talk about today. But what was that? What was kind of the growth of black metal like in the US?
I could tell you, early 90s in New York City, death metal is huge. Death metal is doing its thing. And by the only way in 93, if you were aware of the Kerrang stuff, was if you were reading Kerrang. And I had an older brother who was very into hair metal, and Kerrang was great for hair metal. And there was this record store called Zigzag Records, an infamous store in Sheepshead Bay, Brooklyn, that sold Kerrang every week. They got the weekly copies imported. My brother Kevin would buy them every week nonstop. It's 1993, and I'm a death metal fan. And he brings that issue home with Varg on the cover. That's like, what the hell is this? I listen to death metal. What the fuck is black metal? Black metal Venom? What is that? And I remember reading it about it. I was like, holy shit. Now, again, I've not heard Emperor, Dogthrone, Mayhem, or Birds. I have not heard these bands. Okay. I would not hear those bands until 1994, actually. Some time passes. The Murder happens in 93. They cover, and then there's a really big cover story on it. There was a smaller black metal cover story about Varg and just about, the scene and his shit talking. But after the Murder happens, it's a huge story in Kerrang, and there's like a bigger black metal spread. Again, I don't hear these bands because those records haven't made their way into America, and America is death metal, around 93, I was in junior college having a metal radio show. I spent a long time in college, by the way, true story. Milked it. And I used to get packages from this label, Jail America, and they had Beherit in America. So Beherit is the first black metal I ever heard. And I did not like it at all back then. Wasn't ready for it. Hearing Oath of the Black Blood in late 93, while I'm listening to Dismember, Entomb, and Deicide, I'm going, this sounds like garbage. Okay. But again, the word black metal is in my head somewhere. It is not until 94 when I finally hear the bands in Norway. And in 94, you started seeing some black metal shirts at the shows in New York City. But squarely in the summer of 95, you have Enslaved and Absu doing a US tour in the summer of 95, literally kicking off, in my opinion, for the Americas, black metal in the second wave, like proper. And that tour comes to New York City, and to me changes New York City forever, actually. That was a wild show. And black metal is here, it arrives. So I would say it is a 94 into 95 progression for America, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's pretty much right. My recollection. I mean, for me, I wasn't living in New York in 94, 95. It was those few years I was living up in Boston. Whole story about why I ended up in Boston for a few years. But anyway, I was in a band and we were going on tour. This is about 95. And we stopped at the record label's office and they had a pile of magazines. And they're like, here, take these magazines to read while you guys are driving. And one of them was that Kerrang issue, right? We should have hung on to that one I still should have that by now. It would be like a collector's item. And that's when I started reading about it. And the other guys in the band, with the exception of the bass player, were like, oh, look at this, like, Conan the Barbarian, like Lord of the Rings bullshit you guys are reading, and they kind of dismissed it. But on that same tour, we played in Gainesville, Florida, and it was like this house show. We were playing with hot water music. I don't know if you guys know who that is.
Sure.
No.
And one of the guys that lived there, all the people, all these like punk rock, like hardcore type kids are like, oh man, our roommate, he's a real asshole. Like, you guys, he's like a real fucking dickhead, just stay away from him, right? Turns out that was the guy I actually ended up becoming friends with. He was like an extreme metalhead. He had all the records, right? All the black metal records. He had the Emperor and Slave Split. He had, Blazing in the Northern Sky. He had, all the stuff, Burzum, Philosophum, And I ended up hanging out with that dude and listening to all these records. And that's how I got into black metal. So that was like 1995. And then, got back from that tour, started buying the records, started, representing the t-shirts. And there was that one store that was in the East Village, Mike. What was it called? Like Lethal Wear?
Yes.
You know that place?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's where I started buying t-shirts. I had like a Mayhem t-shirt. I got the In the Night Side Eclipse Emperor t-shirt, and all these. They had CDs there, so that's where I bought a bunch of stuff.
They also had, I had this great Anathema shirt from them that I wish I still had. But yeah, no, that place was cool. Bleecker Bob's was literally the place where I got almost all of my black metal CDs at one point, and they were very pricey, and I still have quite a few of them, and the little sticker is still on the CD case. And Generation Records too, was starting to get them as well. I pulled out my Panzerfaust vinyl, and it was bought at Generation for $20. I would say, yeah, mid 90s firmly in New York, things really started popping. But if you were listening to black metal in 93 in America, you were ahead of the curve. Honestly.
Yeah, you're basically Dan Lilker probably if you're listening to black metal in 93.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like so for me, as I said, we were kind of closed off from a lot of things. Myself and my best friend Andre, we kind of split off from really kind of the most of the rest of the metal scene. And we started getting a hold of Nuclear Blast catalogs, and the way that it would work is, and I've told the story on an episode like probably 120, 30 episodes back. It was obscenely expensive to make a phone call overseas, and you couldn't order online yet. So you had to call Nuclear Blast and place the order. So we would walk from shop to shop in like the town center, and Andre would tell the person that he would tell some sob story about how he needs to call his mom to come and pick him up. Can he use the store phone? And they would say, yeah, no problem, go use the phone at the back. And he would get into the phone at the back, get the catalog out, start ordering. And then we would, when they start giving him the crook eye, we stop and we go to the next store, and we would do that. And we would kind of end up having like probably 3-4 boxes worth of stuff that we would buy, t-shirts, long sleeves, CDs and stuff like that, all out of the Nuclear Blast catalog. And you then ended up waiting about 2 to 3 months for it to arrive. So there was that anticipation, like, they never used to deliver straight to your door either. You used to get the slip in the mail and say, come to the post office and collect your package. So there was this anticipation, like, when is the slip going to arrive? And it would be like 3-4 weeks in advance. I literally have sleepless nights, like, oh, I can't fucking wait to hear what this is going to sound like. But the exciting thing about that was as well, one, we didn't really have too many magazines that were reviewing a lot of the stuff we ended up ordering. We started just going off of if somebody is thanked in a liner note, or if somebody is mentioned by, somebody we liked, or if the album cover looked cool, or if we could figure out somewhere amidst the German in the German descriptions in the catalog, if I could see dark, death, black, doom, then it's like, okay, this might be all right. And it was so cool discovering stuff like that, because that's how we discovered Ceremony of Opposites, for example. That's how we discovered the Moonspell demo, Under the Moonspell. Fucking incredible record. And it was like Abbey Gore and bands like that, like one thing after the other. And I often lament it, but it sucks to me that people are not going to get to experience that thrill in the year and now. Now it's kind of jump on Spotify and everything's there. But in those days, it was it was very different. So bringing me to my number 6, the infamous record by Marduk, Panzerfaust. Not Panzerfaust, sorry, Panzer Division. Released in 1999 on Osmos Productions. I think personally it is Peter Tachten's best recording that he did. It was recorded at Abyss Studios. It's the 6th album by Marduk. It is one of their most aggressive and fastest records, or probably one of their heaviest as well. It's my favorite of the Legion era. I mean, I've never personally been shy about the fact that I don't really like Legion's vocals very much, but on this album, the music is so good and the performances are so good that I think even he kind of stepped up to the mark and ended up not sounding bad. And he certainly, it's not so bad that it would put me off. I can take it. As much as I would love for them at some point, if ever a record should be re-recorded, this is it, because I think with Mortis, having heard many of those tracks live, I mean, it sounds amazing. But in my view, every single one of the album's 8 tracks is just utterly relentless, uncompromising, brilliant. It's extremely catchy, which is one of the things I really like about the record as well. There's almost a slight kind of hardcore punk element to the way some of the songs are constructed. And then, of course, you've got all of those World War II samples scattered across the record, which really kind of helps set the tone for some of that insanity when the band are playing. And it's no surprise that a lot of the songs on this record are, still in their set list and, are still absolute favorites of mine. Christ Raping Black Metal, Blood Dawn, 502. I mean, the album is just genius. And it was like, there a lot of bands had spoken about war and stuff like that and presented war in a certain way. Bolt Thrower probably being my favorite at the time, but there was just something so stark about the fucking tank on the front of the Panzer tank on the front of that cover, and that's it. Panzer Tank, bullets, the band name, and it was like everything about it was just simple and stark, but just so fucking like bludgeoningly effective. Brilliant, absolutely fucking brilliant.
I'm a huge Marduk fan. I celebrate the entire catalog. I got to see them with Legion several times. They're one of the bands I can honestly say in my category of they don't have a bad record. They have lesser records, but I literally enjoy everything they've ever done, every era of the band. And huge Marduk fan.
Mike, did you go to that show where Marduk toured with Deicide? Remember that?
I did.
Where was that venue? I don't recall where it was.
Lemoore in Brooklyn.
Was it Lemoore's? Yeah, right. That's what I thought.
Yes,
okay.
It was.
All right.
Yes.
Right. Yeah, that was the first time I saw Marduk, actually.
That was a great show. That was they finally got to America, 2000, first time in America. That was great, man. Yeah.
For me, they did kind of step up. They leveled up manyfold when Mortis joined the band, and I'm just a absolute fiend for Mortis and for Funeral Mist anyway. But I remember hearing Plague Angel for the first time and like just going, Jesus Christ, like this is next level stuff. And then they topped that with Romans 5:12. And then they arguably topped that with Wormwood, and it was like they just went on an absolute tear in kind of in the noughties. But I think the record that laid the foundation for what they have become is Panzerfaust not Panzerfaust, Panzer Division. It's because I got the band Panzerfaust on the fucking brain. That's why.
Great band.
Yeah,
by the way.
But Panzer Division just absolutely sensational. All right, so Mike S, number 5.
Okay. I hope this doesn't break any rules. I don't think it does, but we'll see. It is the Emperor side of the Emperor Enslaved split. Now, don't get me wrong, the whole split is great, but it is not my favorite Enslaved music. Personally, the greatest Enslaved record for me is Eld, which is in my top 10. Today we're doing a top 6. Eld by Enslaved to me is their record for me. However, for Emperor, the songs on this split, their self-titled EP, which was then reissued, as a standalone, is the greatest Emperor recording. I first heard this in '94 when Century Black put it out. Again, Century Media had a huge hand in introducing black metal to America, because in 1994, they released both this and De Mysteriis Dom Sathanas by Mayhem into America at the same time. Also in that year, they put out Ceremony of Opposites by Samael, but Samael had already been established. But as far as the Norwegian stuff, Century Black, really also helps to kick things off in America. There is something about this recording that is very different from the In the Night Side Eclipse recording, which, don't get me wrong, is fine. It's wonderful. But the vibes on this record, like the versions of Eye on Black Wizard and, Cosmic Keys, there's just something about it that, I don't know, is just so different than the LP versions. And it's the first thing I ever heard from the band. It's what made me fall in love with the band. It is one of the records that made me fall in love with black metal. And I mean, what can we say about this, man? I mean, this is, to me, A-list stuff from Norway.
You know what's mind-blowing about those early Emperor releases is how young they were when they did that.
High school,
and you listen
17,
to the
and
you listen to the degree of musical intellect at work there. And look, I've got my problems with Old Man Ish on, but that's same off different story. I think he's just an absolute beast, and I wish he would make another Wretched End record. But for me to have done what they did at their age, like with that degree of like musical intuition or like understanding music and musical dynamics the way that they did, they were so far ahead of the curve from so many other bands. It was fucking unreal. And a lot of the bands, they had their appeal in different ways, right? It's like the primitivism of a band like Beherit is, ultimately what makes them, what kind of adds to their appeal. But with Emperor, it was like that grandiosity, but done in a way that didn't compromise on the feel, the passion, the aggression of the music, especially on those early releases. So I'll hold there because there might be an Emperor release on my list. But,
yes, I mean, honestly, for me, without this EP recorded in '92, there's no Demu, there's no Cradle of Filth. Like the word grandiose, orchestral, but at the same time, just this vibe of just like you. I heard this. I was 20 when I first turned 21. Actually, just turned 21 when I heard it, and I felt like I was transported to Norway. Honestly, hearing this for the first time, it was just fucking floored me. And I know, Mr. Hill, you're a huge Emperor fan.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this is actually the first thing I owned by them. The cassette version of Emperor Enslaved, and I picked it up on that tour. Actually, I was telling you about when we discovered them. Hitting all the record stores, and I found it in the cassette section of a record store. It might have been in Baltimore, I think. I picked it up, and that was the very first black metal purchase, like as far as music went, was that cassette version of that split.
That's awesome.
So, Mr. Hill, on to your number 5.
All right. Number 5 for me is Dark Throne, Transylvanian Hunger from February 1994. And that's a controversial guy who was involved in writing a lot of the songs on this record. And but in some ways, he is probably, I'm talking about Varg, of course.
Yeah.
The
instrumental.
He's like the behind the scenes guy architecting a lot of this music, and it's some people might criticize the fact that I'm going to give him praise, but without Varg, there's no black metal, in my opinion. No Norwegian black metal. And with that said, there's also no USBM too. I think that there are so many bands in the United States that owe their entire sound to Burzum and Varg. And these bands, some of them might even take offense to me saying that. However, I believe that to be true. And I'm not going to name any names, but that's just how I feel about it. Transylvanian Hunger recorded on a 4-track.
Wow.
In Fenris's bedroom, apparently. And one of the iciest recordings I think I've ever heard. And I think it's a brilliant record. And Dark Throne was one of the bands that I got into after Emperor and Burzum. And was sort of the more punk vibe of what they're sounding, encapsulated was what attracted me, especially at the time. That was kind of like my leanings were more that kind of crustier, direction. And it's just, I think it's one of their, that once again, this record also had a ton of controversy, with some of the stuff that they'd had in the the jackets, on the record jackets,
the original back. Yeah.
Yeah. So, keeping the controversy alive and also moving forward the black metal sound. We got Transylvanian Hunger.
Wonderful record. I first heard Dark Throne. Rich O'Brien, our mutual friend, the singer of the hardcore band Dark Side NYC, loans me Blazing in the Northern Sky on CD in 1994. And he goes, yeah, you need to hear this. And he was right. Amazing, game-changing record. And I want to say, Jackie, this guy Rich also loaned me in 1992 Paradise Lost is Gothic. So Rich has helped shape my musical life. This guy, you would like Rich O'Brien. But anyway, Dark Throne is they're my favorite black metal band of all time. What can I say?
We're gonna most likely get back into Dark Throne in a little bit.
Yes,
so I'll hold my comment and I'll jump straight into my number 5. So my number 5, Immortal Battles in the North, released in 1995, another Osmos Productions release. I mean, I was debating as to whether I would put on At the Heart of Winter, but I really had to concede in the sense that personally, I think there are very, very few albums that have had a bigger influence and impact on my musical taste than Battles in the North. And there's a slightly cerebral reason why I actually became aware of this record, reading an interview with Phil Anselmo in Metal Maniacs. And for a chunk early on in my life, like Pantera was the band for me, and everything that Phil Anselmo liked was immediately something that I knew I needed to check out. I remember when he wore the Transylvanian Hunger t-shirt, I was like, I have to check out Dark Throne. I remember him talking about Ceremony of Opposites, and I was like, oh, that's a record I have to get a hold of as well. On this interview, he was talking about records he had liked that year, and he mentioned specifically Battles in the North and said that it had been the best thing that he had heard, for however long. So that really stuck with me. And then a few months later, I was given a cassette by somebody at school to record something for them. I developed the habit of any time I needed to record something for somebody, I would listen to what was on the cassette first, because a couple of months previously, I had discovered Brutal Truth's Extreme Conditions that way. And that record I absolutely loved as well. And I put this cassette on, and for whatever reason, it's still one of the most crazy experiences of my life. I literally knew inside of the first 20 seconds what I was hearing. I'd never heard Immortal before. I only knew the name. I knew within the first 20 seconds of listening to Battles in the North. And I was just gobsmacked. The whole record for me is just such a ferocious, it's this really spontaneous, immediate sounding record. Like there's almost like this kind of like that sort of throwaway rebellion of like old school punk. It has that, but with the coldness and the frost of Norway sitting, on top of every single song. And then, they kind of finally finish off with, Blashker, which is like when that keyboard bit is playing, it's so simple and so primitive, but it's so fucking effective. And that song that record to this day, frankly, can give me goosebumps. I love it for all of its flaws, for all of its unpolished roughness. I don't think that I loved At the Heart of Winter, but I don't think Immortal ever quite reached the pinnacle of Battles in the North again. And I frankly don't think that they should ever try, because however they recorded that in whatever spontaneous, Satan-inspired way, I don't think you could recreate it. It's like trying to recreate Appetite for Destruction, unless with the Guns N' Roses guys, unless they're all, addicted to fucking heroin and there's all sorts of craziness going along. They'll never be able to make music that sounds like that again. I don't think any band, even if they tried, could redo something like Battles in the North.
Hill, I'll let you take this because there's a reason.
Okay. I got to be honest, man. I didn't feel Immortal like back in the day. It was the vocals really. I'm a fan now, and I remember thinking they had the coolest name. Immortal, like their t-shirts looked awesome, and I checked it out and I was like, oh, this is cool, but like, man, I can't get behind the vocals. And then I just kind of throughout the 90s didn't really get into them so much, and then later on though, as I got deeper and deeper into, Immortal, and people kept being like, oh man, you got to listen to like, more of this stuff. I started, getting, I guess it was an acquired taste with the vocals, you know what I mean? And now I'm a fan, now I definitely like Immortal, but back in the day, I remember being turned off by the vocals for Immortal. So, I don't share the enthusiasm, I guess.
Well, the reason why I threw it to you is because my number 4 is Immortal Battles in the North.
I was about to say they're for sure we are going to get overlap. I think especially as we get into the top 3.
Man, this is my favorite Immortal record. It is one of my favorite black metal records of all time. Trance-inducing record for me, I'll say. Much like the Emperor side of the Emperor and Slave split. I put it on. I'm in Norway. I don't know, man. Something about this too, Jackie. Yeah. This record comes on, man. This is their Raid in Blood. Okay. I could talk about this record all day. I have 5 versions of this record on vinyl. I have 2 versions on CD. I have the original Digipack CD, the OG one from 95. I first heard this in September of 95. My friend Bob made me a black metal mixtape, and a few of Immortal songs were on it. And this, holy fucking shit, it's like a steamroller tank, The vocals, honestly, again, yes, an acquired taste, but I loved them the moment I heard them. I was like, this guy is out of his fucking mind. Like, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, there's something about this record. Look, the fun, cheesy videos, which to me back then were not cheesy. I thought they were cool. Now they're obviously cheesy.
Yeah.
Dude, they're in the fucking snow in Norway with like no shirts on with their instruments. Like, I don't know, man. I got it. Something about Immortal and about this record. I heard this record first. I didn't hear Pure Holocaust first. Like, usually with a band, whatever you hear first turns out to be your favorite. So that's why this is my favorite. Again, Osmo stuff in 95 took a little while to hit in America. And I think I didn't own a copy of this till 96, but I got that mixtape in 95 with a few songs on it. This record front to back, like if they ever reformed with the real Immortal and said, yeah, we're going to do this record front to back, I would lose my mind. I
was about to say the drummer is going to need to, even though, I mean, the record's only about, I think, 35 minutes long. He's going to need to, drink his vitamins and say his prayers, because to make it through the like relentlessness of that drumming is fucking nuts. Because like if you listen to him, it's not just blasting. Like you listen to records now where there's fast drums and it's like it's like a steady metronomic blast, but he sounds like he's trying to fucking assault the drum kit for the entirety of the album. He sounds like the drum kit owes him money.
Yeah, and also that's a bath on drums. That is
that's true, actually. Yeah.
And one of the coolest parts about this record, much like both throwers in Battle There Is No Law, are the drumming mistakes that honestly I wasn't even aware of. There's fuck ups on this record. I wasn't aware of the fuck ups until I really, really sat down, not even all that long ago, and was like, yeah, oh shit, there are fuck ups on this record. Because one of the message boards I'm on for metal pointed it out, and they were like, it's part of the record's charm. And I'm like, well, yeah, it definitely is, but I didn't know that there were like fuck ups on this record. But yeah, it's a bath on drums, and possibly part of the reason why it does sound like the drums owe him money is because, I mean, he's not a drummer, quote unquote, per se. I bet this record might have killed him. I mean, this record is out of control,
Yeah. I mean, it's like, and adding to how unhinged it is, like the fact that the first song basically finishes with an intro. I mean, that's just fucking mental. It's like the song, like it's almost like they go, okay, well, we're at this point now, so let's just do what we did right at the start of the track again.
Yeah, Battles in the North, man. Ooh,
Mike, do you remember when they played in Brooklyn at that Masonic temple?
Yes, I also saw them at the Wetlands with Satyricon. which was awesome, and Angel Corpse. That was
Oh yeah, man, Angel Corpse.
Wow, 3 of my favorite bands. Yeah, man, I fuck, it's such a special band. Abath solo stuff, it's good. I don't love it. I don't go home and put it on. And Immortal without Abath, it's good. I don't put it on, but Immortal proper is fucking great.
100% agree. All right, Michael Hill.
All right, so my number 4 is Burzum Philosophum. It's the 4th record by them and by Varg in 1996. This has to be on the list. It's a crucial record. To this day, Jesus Todt is like makes the hair on the back of my neck stand up. And it's the whole genre of one man black metal, really owes everything to Varg. And black metal wouldn't exist without Varg.
It's 100%.
I mean, he's an integral part of so many of the formative records. And I'm not even gonna go into all who cares? The thing is, for me, it's an artistic thing, it's a creative thing, and Burzum is probably my favorite black metal band of all time, honestly. Yeah.
That's my favorite Burzum LP. So I hear you, Mike. That's my number 1 Burzum LP.
That's Mike moved to the sketchy list on Rate Your Music. He once admitted that Burzum is his favorite black metal band. So I love Philosophy. It was the first Burzum record that I ever heard. I remember hearing Dunkelheit for the first time, and it was really one of these only songs that I've ever heard that actually slightly made me nervous. Like I heard it, I was like, this isn't like just your usual black metal. I think maybe knowing the background of everything made me even more tense about it. I was 16 when I heard it the first time, but when you hear Dunkelheit for the first time, it's revelation. It's like a total revelation. I think as far there are a few songs that are as definitively black metal. If I hear the phrase black metal, said, or I think about black metal, one of the first things I think about is just the way that song opens. So haunting, so completely and utterly absorbing, and just so absolutely fucking dark and brooding. There were bands that were doing dark and trying to do dark and brooding stuff in those days, but it just ended up sounding weak. I've spoken before about Morgan telling me about the, black metal shouldn't be about somebody sitting by the river crying. I hated that style of black metal, but Burzum, when he slowed down, it was just a totally different thing. And I agree with you. He's his door, phenomenal song. The song right after, fucking brilliant as well. But yeah, great record. And stunning album cover, to this day, one of my favorite album covers ever.
Yeah, exactly. The imagery, the vibe, the atmosphere, and also just the creative energy of the dude is ingrained in Norwegian black metal. And like I said, all the disciples of that second wave really owe everything to the early catalog of Burzum.
There's a real artistry in being able to convey as much emotion and create as much impact as Varg is able to on that record through restraint. You think about Dunkelheit as a song. There's 3-4 notes in that keyboard line. It's like dun 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 dun. It's that's fucking incredible. There are bands that'll have whole 100-piece orchestras that can't even get close to what a fucking 20 odd something lunatic did in his basement with that album, just as far as I said, impact and maybe even longevity, you could say. It's just, it is a mastered work on that song and on that album.
I agree. And just I have a very, very specific memory of listening to this record during a snowstorm, driving a van across Pennsylvania. And it was we played a show in Pennsylvania, and we were driving to get away from the snowstorm that was happening. And I remember in these roads in the backwoods of nowhere with the sun, just the snow coming towards the windshield, the headlights on, and listening to this record. And Jesus Todt was playing, and I was like, man, this is one of the most intense moments of my life. Try to not keep the van on the road while listening to this record.
Wow.
I don't actually think he's that bad of a drummer either. You know, it's very simplistic, the drum lines he plays, but it's very. I mean, he clearly writes it in service of the music, but like on Ease's Dirt, for example, it sounds fucking cool. It's like almost like a slightly tribal sort of drum beat that he's playing, but great, just fucking fantastic. So my number 4, we've just spoken about them a second ago, and Mike S will be super happy. Dark Throne, A Blaze in the Northern Sky. The first of the so-called unholy trinity of black metal came out in 1992 on Peaceful Records. It kicks off with a track that I think hints a little at the death metal style that they had on Soulside Journey, but really kind of with enough darkness to hint at what's to come later on the record. And when that album hits its stride, it is merciless in the best possible way. In the Shadow of the Horns, I think is maybe about as perfect a track as Dark Throne has ever written, in my opinion. You know, from the way that it starts with kind of like the symbol countdown, the evil laughter. You know, you can hear very clearly that Fenris and Nocturno Culto were obsessed with Celtic Frost and Hellhammer at this point in their career. But the way that translates into their own art and their own artistic expression, you know, I think was really streets ahead of their time. Then you have that really cool acoustic, outro at the end of In the Shadow of the Horns, fucking brilliant. Creates this beautifully like stark contrast against the fuzz and the fury that preceded it. And I think the rest of the album is littered with masterpieces too. Where the Cold Winds Blow, phenomenal song. When I first heard this, I didn't really like the production very much. That definitely took a while to grow on me. Kind of like what Mike S was saying earlier with Beherit. There was especially if you came from the black metal scene, you know, you kind of look down your nose initially at the production on a lot of black metal records, and it took some time for that to grow on you. But I would say, even though Hate Them is and probably always will be forever my favorite Dark Throne record, when it comes to 90s output, for me, A Blaze in the Northern Sky was it. Just, you know, like I said, a terrifying record, and one where if you play to a normal person, they're not going to know what the fuck's going on there. They're going to think the speaker is broken. So
one could argue it's almost like the first Black Sabbath of Norwegian black metal, honestly.
Yeah.
It is, to me, like, I gave it a really good listen just the other day because I just got a new copy of it on white vinyl. This new anniversary edition that came out from Peaceville. And it's a declaration that death metal is dead. If you really if you pay attention to it and you read the lyrics, it's like they're making a statement on that record, and it is like, fuck you, Norwegian black metal. Like, that's I love that record so much. Not my favorite Dark Throne record.
Zephyrus is on that, right? They had
Player.
He hadn't left the band at that point. Yeah, in the Shadow of the Horns is like probably my favorite Dark Throne song, but it's not on my favorite Dark Throne record, you know. And like that drum beat that comes in, we call that the scumbag drum beat. You know, that goom 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 goom. You know, like that's like like the scumbag beat. And we like that. We refer to that all the time. You know, band practice.
The Tombs Camp.
Like yeah, the Tombs Camp. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
awesome.
Great choice.
Right. So, Mike S, you're number 3.
Okay, number 3 is the most important American black metal record for me, from my favorite American black metal band, and it is Absu's second LP from 1995, The Son of Tippereth. As I said before, Absu and Enslaved in July, August 95 do the first ever American black metal tour. And yeah, it changes the fucking game in New York, across America. There was something about seeing them back then, like, you know, before the show starts, there was like this like ritual, like the whole set is on YouTube. Actually, I'm going to send it to you, Jackie. It's wild.
Oh, awesome. Yeah.
And just keep in mind as you're watching it, it is 1995 in New York City. And like everyone in the crowd is most of the crowd is wearing death metal shirts. Okay. Maybe a little portion are wearing black metal shirts. Incantations on the show. It's like this really big show. I have like two different flyers for this show in my collection. And it was just like you sense that this was like something important, you know, something big happening. And yeah, this record is just loaded with like vibes for me, and just like atmosphere and like song structure, and like what I thought back then was female vocals, but no, it's actually Prescriptor's fucking singing in fucking falsetto, like, you know what I'm saying? I love the album cover by Chris Verwimp, fucking brutal, harsh, barbaric kind of painting. This is another one. I own the box set of this record. I own several versions on vinyl. It just brings up a lot of great memories of like the summer of 1995 for me. And yeah, I was even contemplating getting a tattoo from this record on me at one point. Yeah, I'm a pretty big Absu fan. I mean, Absu, Von, Demency, Profanatica, that is like the crucial four of the first wave of American black metal. But Absu is like my number one, and they are my number three favorite black metal record of all time, Son of Tippereth.
Yeah, Absu were like a band that not very many people were even aware of black metal back then. You know what I mean? Like you were saying, it's mostly death metal shirts at the show. Like I very few people even knew of the existence of the genre, really, and then to have bands like Absu, Profanatica actually actively making music in the United States at that time was like pretty groundbreaking, really.
Oh yeah. Yeah, Profanatica were in Jersey, Jackie, back then, and they were like this weird outcast band in a scene of outcasts. Like if you knew of Profanatica, they were gigging in the early 90s, again, amongst your morticians, your immolations, your incantations, but they were wearing corpse paint. They were self-identifying as black metal in like 92, in America, like, you know what I'm saying? So that was like a big deal.
Yeah, absolutely. One of another of my Metal Maniacs discoveries, and it was mostly just by virtue of the photos they had of them in the magazine. I was like, these guys look fucking badass. And I was like, I need to give this a listen. They were very much on the short list of bands to make it onto this list, but this is kind of where the the challenge of trying to find or trying to narrow it down came in. But yeah, totally agree. Great band, and it sucks that they split up.
Yeah.
Okay, Mike Hill.
All right, so my number three is Storm of the Light's Bane by Dissection, November 1995. And we kind of touched on this record earlier. When I first heard this, I thought it was going to be like studied in like music schools alongside Beethoven and all that. I mean, this was like musically one of the most intense black metal records. It had a lot of thrash and death metal elements to it, but the pure like satanic nature of the music, the the speeds, the tempos they were playing at, like all this stuff was like very, very intense and heavy. And then of course, once again, this is sort of a controversial band, because of founder John Nodevit. Sorry for butchering this.
Yeah, I know, it's a hard
gentleman's name, but
rest in peace.
But yeah, it's one of the ultimate just visionaries. I think like he had a very defined idea of what he wanted to do with this band, and he just executed it. And he put together a lineup of musicians who can perform this music, and challenging. I mean, if you try to play along to this record, it's like one of the more difficult records to play along to. I think, in my opinion. I'm not, I'm no Dave Davidson or anything like that, but I'm I have a hard time playing along to this record, and just a genre defining record from Sweden.
Yeah, when I was practicing guitar a lot when I was younger, like the greatest achievement of my guitar playing ever was to be able to play probably the first 2 minutes of Where Dead Angels Lie. That was about as close as it got. I totally agree with you. Like technicality on this record is absolutely off the page. I don't know whether you've ever seen interviews with John. There's one that was done it's on YouTube. It's about a year before he killed himself. He is the most intense human being that maybe I've ever seen in music. I mean, there's like soullessness behind the man's eyes. which is weird to me because it's bizarre how Rain Chaos turned out. That's a different story. It's such a trite record in comparison to what you thought you was going to create after Storm of the Lightsbane. But I mean, look, I don't necessarily love it quite as much as you do. I was a big fan of it when it came out. We had actually in one of our Nuclear Blast shopping sprees, we bought the Somber Lane, and I really liked that. And then Storm of the Lightsbane came out, which was a big step up from that. And there are songs on this album that I think are just incredible. The kind of the middle meat is for me where it comes into its own, where Dead Angels Lie, Retribution, and Thorns of Crimson Death, like those are the songs. But I think the Swedish sound I never liked quite as much as the Norwegian stuff. Which is why that record wasn't one that I listened to quite as much, I think, as a lot of the other stuff that was coming out at the time. But good record, beautiful artwork as well. Yeah. Like artwork that just perfectly captures what the record is about.
Yeah, I love this record, man.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no problem. I was going to say, I love this record. It's a great choice. Again, another one of the college radio Nuclear Blast package records. I actually had the pleasure to see the Dissection at the Gates Morbid Angel tour in February '96 at the Wetland. So I saw them live. I was standing like right up front. It was fucking amazing. It's funny regarding Rain Chaos. I actually like that record. It's the satanic Megadeth, rest in peace. I almost feel like it's like as thrash metal as it is death metal, but. Yeah, the thing about No Debit, like it's funny. I remember when he got arrested and was in jail, and I would talk. Me and my friends would be like, "Oh man, is he getting out? When's he getting out of jail?" Like it was like a big deal. And then he finally got out of jail, and he immediately reformed the band, and it was like, holy shit, But back then, you didn't really see what he was looking like, and then you saw that he had shaved off his head, and it was like, holy shit. It was like kind of like a big kind of funny memory. But probably one of the most important Swedish bands of all time, and a lot of people would argue one of the most important black metal bands of all time. But I do think that I don't know, like sometimes they get lost in the shuffle. I almost feel like, as much as they're acclaimed, I feel like geographically, sometimes Sweden does get lost in the shuffle. And maybe like the fact that Marduk is still around, like to me, like Marduk is the marquee Swedish band, and I would put Dissection right below Marduk on the personal side. But yeah, I mean, in his death though, he's become more popular, and like Dissection in a way has grown in the wake of his death, like much like, Typo Negative, who are almost 5 times bigger in the death of Pete Steele. So,
all right, on to my number 3, my Burzum inclusion, and I could have put so many records on here, but I ended up going with Vis Lysa Taros, released in 1994. It is Varg's third full length. It's interestingly the best reviewed Burzum record on Metal Archive with 92%. I think the song or the moment on the record that wins the day for me, that meant that this was the album that I included, was the first track, Det som en gång var, which was ironically the name of the previous record. Like when I talk about it, like you talk about music that sounds like war, like you're going to war with humanity and society. Like you remember those old more of the old school black metal ads, like at war with humanity or whatever the case may be. Like that sort of thing really appealed to me when I was at school for various reasons that we probably won't have time to get into. But when you hear the opening track on this record, it has this extended ambient moment where very typical of Varg. It's restraint. It's only a couple of notes, and then all of a sudden the drums kick in, and then this riff starts playing. I mean, it's just straight up fucking hatred and necroness and violence. It's on a par for me with Dunkelheit as far as songs that are definitive black metal. I think one of the things that Varg really nailed on this record was the ability to kind of have these big moments that come up against, or that come up against what I would kind of call a bridge riff. I remember Sathanas was talking about that when Volcano came out, and he was talking like sometimes you'd create these riffs that are like really just kind of nonsense riffs, and then they're there to help build up and create this real impact when when everything kind of snaps into focus. In I slotted fra Druminen, whatever it's called, is a great example of that. Track 3 on the record. The main riff is a fucking child could have come up with it, but then it's like the song that when it snaps into focus and the big moment comes out, you're almost like, okay, now I 100% get why he put that in there, because it made that moment have so much impact. But I could have put in a myriad of Burzum records on this, but this to me is the one. And as I said, it's that opening track that wins it out for me in the end.
Yeah, just such brilliant songwriting, man. That's really what it comes down to with Burzum,
Some of the kind of really hypnotic parts in this, and I was glad I was going to have you on the show, Mike, because some of the hypnotic parts in this, I've definitely heard more of an influence of that coming into recent stuff you've done. Like if I think about the last Tombs full length, there's definitely moments where it's not like plagiarism, but you understand what I mean. Like I can hear the Burzum influence really kind of getting more pronounced on some of the recent stuff you've done, especially I'd say the latter half of the last Tombs record.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's it's almost by way of, say, Leviathan, I think, that because I'm influenced heavily by Jeff Whitehead too, man. I mean, he's like, in my opinion, he's the man in the United States when it comes to black metal. Just in my opinion, he's like the architect of that whole one-man thing in the States, really. Definitely, Burzum and Leviathan inform a lot of the stuff, like the more, like you were saying, the more quote unquote hypnotic stuff that we do. That kind of meditative like vibe, I think, is something that I'm really into.
All right, we're getting into the business end of shit now. Man.
That's
so Mike S, number 2.
Okay, this is where it gets a little pedestrian, as you said. That I love that word. And we have my black metal cat Doyle making an appearance into the camera. We are going with De Mysteriis Dom Sathanas as my second favorite black metal record of all time. It's probably a lot of people's number 1, or at least top 3, top 5. 1994, my Century Black copy, OG copy. As we all know, recorded in 93, didn't come out till 94, post-mortem, of course, for Euronymous. Features Varg on bass as, the worst kept secret in black metal. If you knew that he was on bass, you were in the know that apparently for many years they had told people that, we removed him from the bass track, to tell Euronymous' family, but no, he was never removed from the bass track. He was on the record the entire time. Attila makes his, debut on vocals. Honestly, look, I love Dead, but Attila's the guy on this record. I feel like what happened with Mayhem had to happen, the death of Mayhem, the death of Euronymous. It brings Mayhem to where they are in the culture. It brings them to where they are musically today. I mean, the whole story. Look, everybody knows the story if you're listening to this podcast. If you don't, Google it. But the undeniability of this record. I mean, you put it on, it's another one. You're transported, I think, to the early 90s in Norway, dripping with vibe, dripping with atmosphere. Again, acquired taste vocals, let's be honest. First listen of this in 94, Popeye did come to mind. I'm not going to lie. But I was always in search of something new. I was listening to hardcore music in the early 80s. I hear death metal in 1990. I love it, okay? Cut to 1993, 94. I hear black metal. I love it. So I was very intrigued by all this as it was happening, I could see how it was probably a shock to a lot of people the average Century Media death metal person when all this was kind of coming out. Like, I almost feel like it was like love it or hate it for a minute at the time, you know? But the cultural significance, the historical significance, I mean, what more can be said about DMDS?
So I'll lift the lid off the mystery of my number 2 because it's the same record.
Nice.
And Mayhem are my favorite black metal band. I mean, bar none. I mean, I am of the belief that they have almost gotten better musically as they've gone on. I think Ordo ad Chaos is a masterpiece. I love Esoteric Warfare, even though a lot of people don't. And I think Demon is fucking incredible as well.
Demon's amazing.
Yeah, no, it's astounding, and Ditto. I've spoken so many times about it on the show. You know, I've been so lucky this year to have so many people on this podcast that I've always wanted to have on, like people I've admired for a long time. Attila is the 2023 target. Like if I can get him on, that'll be the main thing that I would want to have achieved by the end of the year. He's the best black metal frontman and best black metal vocalist. There's not anybody who. The only guy that comes close is Mortus. But what he does with his voice, like on this record as well, it sounds fucking inhuman for the most part. I mean, there's parts where he's not even singing; it's just gurgle. It's like just noises. You know, he's like this fetid corpse rising from the grave, like this ghoul coming after you. The whole album is packed with riffs, and the thing that stands out about this record, as well as Hellhammer's drums, which is just, especially for the time, is so different and so. Like he's got these weird rolls that he does where it's like he's chasing the riff with a roll. I totally agree. I don't think I could have summarized it any better in terms of the impact of the album. You hear these songs today, like I saw them do the majority of this record live, and it's. I mean, when you hear Freezing Moon, I don't give a fuck who you are, what music you're into. My girlfriend is not even close to being into black metal, but even she was like, fuck, I get what you're talking about. Yeah, I remember my friend Liorsifer, the tattoo artist, he was talking to me about going to a guy like a dude who's not into metal who went with him to a show once, and he said they saw Watain opening for Mayhem, and the guy walked out and he was like he said, I understand why people like Watain. They didn't convince me. Like Mayhem is fucking scary. That is a convincingly frightening band to see live. And I was like, and I was like, that's the difference between them and just about everybody else. There's something about that band that no one else has, and that's why. I mean, I'm as I said, borderline. I would say my favorite band, all genres, all time. You know, without a doubt.
What are the chances of my number 2 also being this record? No, dude. It was a toss-up between this as number 1, and I put this at number 2. And it's crazy that this is like also my number 2. This might be arguably one of the best black metal records to come out in the whole 90s, really.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, just as far as like, you know, the riffs, you know, like the vocals. At this stage, I love the vocals, but I remember, you know, I was working at the warehouse. You know, we used to get our little employee discount, and this record came. You know, we got some shipment of these records, and I was like, you know what? Let me get this. I've been reading about it, so I put my money down. I go back to my room afterwards, and I'm like, put it in my CD player, and I was like, get the fuck out of here with these vocals, man. But then months later, I find myself listening to this record again, and I was like, this is like some next level shit. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't know. There was like the vocals really grew on me, and I have come to appreciate them. And like similar to what Jackie said, Attila really is one of the most creative black metal singers, probably the most creative black metal singer in the entire genre, in my opinion.
Mike Patton of black metal.
Yeah, there you go.
100%.
Exactly. Yep. The Mike Patton of black metal.
Well, what blew me away about having Ghoul on the podcast, way back on episode 45, is he was telling me when they did Marlum as an example, which is one of the best tracks of Demon. He says that clean singing at the end is like something that was just done spontaneously. They'd recorded the song, and Attila was just like, they said, like, can we put something in at the end? And Attila was like, all right, jumped in the vocal booth, did that, done. One take, didn't think twice about it, just did what is one of the best parts of the whole album. The guy is a fucking genius. He has range and power in his vocals that it's just it's unmatched. I mean, it's really incredible. I'm just floored by how good he is. And one of the things I love about that band as well, I love the way they present themselves. I like the fact that there's the theatrics on stage. I love the fact that when you see them like outside of like the stage, they're really well presented. Like you look at them, especially nowadays, like they don't look like fucking slobs or scumbags. They actually generally like dressed well. There's like an attitude to the band that's just different to everybody else. I was talking to David Gray about it last week. This was kind of like the same for me with Akrokaka. I felt like the way they approached the satanic stuff, in the early 2000s, there was like a greater sophistication to that. And because there was more sophistication and intelligence to it, it somehow felt more convincing to me, or at least I connected with it, in a more authentic and a more profound way than I did with a lot of the other like cartoonish stuff, even though some of that I really love. But Mayhem is the same to me. There's like if I think of like choosing to love black metal and like making the music or integrating the music into your lifestyle, then there are very few bands, not called, Ecclesiastes or Tombs or whatever the case may be, that stand out for me as much as Mayhem when it comes to representing that.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan. Being an elder statesman, I had the opportunity to see the first show they ever did in America while I was on tour with Inhuman. We had a day off in California. It was July '98. And their first show in America was at the Whiskey in LA. That band Phobia opened up, the grindcore band.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Mikko, you're familiar with them. Yeah, it was a weird show. That was the opener. And it was an event, and I have never missed a show in New York since. So, I absolutely love Mayhem. It's always a big deal when they play. Getting Attila, back in the band, like on a permanent, side, was a very smart move.
Agree.
Looking forward to see what they do next.
Well, my brothers in Werewolves are going to be playing with them in January. I'm so fucking stoked about that.
Thank you for introducing me to Werewolves. The two of you, by the way. I have all three of their records now, and I fucking love them. So thank you for that.
All right. This is the main thing that everybody, the legions, have been waiting for, and with bated breath.
Yes.
Number ones. So again, we start with Mike S.
Okay, it's a band that has been mentioned quite a bit today, and it is Dark Throne, and it is Panzerfaust. Yes, Panzerfaust is my favorite black metal record of the 90s. This record, from the moment it starts to the moment it ends, has me and has had me since I bought the CD at Bleecker Bob's for $20 in 1996. Came out in 95 in Europe, obviously, but this didn't really hit here till 96. The Frost vibes and the Frost worship mixed with the Dark Throne, works so well. And I don't know, maybe, and look, I'm the hardcore guy at heart. This whole record is a mosh fest, okay? It is like the moshiest record maybe in the history of black metal. You put this record, if a band came on now and just said, we're going to play Panzerfaust, people would lose their fucking minds, okay? It would be ape shit. That's just one of the reasons I like this record. I almost feel like this record comes out and it's post Transylvanian Hunger, and you almost feel like, what are they going to do next? Like, what's next for Dark Throne? Is it just going to be another kind of, trancy singular record? Like, they're already like a Godfather band by 95, okay? And they're already a huge underground band, and they put out a tribute to fucking Celtic Frost in a way, and it was kind of out of left field and very surprising, but something about it I was just like, oh my God, this fucking record is amazing. Every riff, every like moment, it's just like, it just kind of stays with you. It's you put it on, you can't really turn it off. You have to listen to the whole thing. even the final kind of spoken creepy track, which I'm not going to pronounce because I can't speak Norwegian. I love that too, actually. There's something about that. I wish I could get an English translation of what he's saying at the end. It's very like, again, it just kind of transports you to Norway. I finally got to go to Norway in 2019, and I went to Helvet. I was in Bergen and Oslo, and records that were permeating in my head were this one and you know, Enslaved Eld and Emperor, and it was just like, I don't know. It's just like one of those records that makes me the black metal diehard that I am today. Like my love for this record, and I do think it kind of stems a bit from hardcore in a way, because there's a little bit of old sheer terror on this record, and of course there's Celtic Frost worship, and old sheer terror worship Celtic Frost. So I absolutely love Panzerfaust.
I have not spent nearly as much time recently with that record as I need to, but you've whet my appetite now. I'm definitely going to have to do more.
Yeah. Oh, it's good. It's good.
Yeah. Yeah. As I said, I'm so wrapped up in Hate Them, and really kind of the immediate two records that came after that. You know, that I do sometimes I think actually Plague Wielder, Hate Them, and Sardonic Wrath. Those are the ones I get wrapped up in most, especially Plague Wielder and Hate Them. But I think I sometimes neglect some of that kind of later 90s material of theirs. But I am for sure gonna go back and study Panzerfaust.
And to Dark Throne's credit, when a lot of bands you know, of the second wave in Norway and Europe were kind of losing the plot, you know, kind of falling off the wheels, and Dark Throne puts out your Hate Thems, your Plague Wielder, your Panzer. They put out 100% black metal records for a long stretch until they stopped, and they've kind of stopped for quite a bit. But people kind of forget that when things were weird and the U.S. second wave was kicking off, Dark Throne was still putting out proper black metal records when a lot of their peers were not at all putting out black metal records, in my opinion. So that's something you have to give Dark Throne props to.
100%. All right, the number one for Mike Hill.
Okay.
I'm just before you say anything, I've got a very strong hunch that you and I are going to have the same one. Let us see.
Okay.
Your number one.
So my number one is In the Nightside Eclipse by Emperor. 1994. You know, once again, we have another criminal in the band on this record. We have Faust on drums. And I mean, this is you know, my favorite. Well, like I said, it was a toss-up between this one and Mysteriis, but this one maybe edged it out a little bit by the inclusion of I Am the Black Wizard and Cosmic Keys to, you know, my creation. Like those songs stand out to me, even though they were on the, you know, obviously I Am the Black Wizard was on the Enslaved split, but I prefer the re-recording of that, Mike. I know that you prefer the original, but yeah, two of my favorite all-time Emperor songs are on this record. And yeah, once again, just the musicianship, the introduction of the symphonic elements, you know, a little bit more subtle on this record than they were later on in their career. But this, when I remember hearing this, and I was just blown away by how fast this was. And, you know, and I later learned when I saw Emperor that Ihsahn was playing all the fucking leads and shit too while he was singing. Wow. You know, at that time I heard this record, I'm like, oh, this guy's probably just playing rhythm, but he's like ripping all the technical parts and also singing, and I was totally impressed by that.
So funnily enough, that is also my number one record, which is I was sitting pondering. It's like I know he likes Emperor and he's not mentioned them yet. And I was like, okay, could it be? Is he gonna throw a swerve and say Anthems to the Welkin at Dusk? So my introduction to Emperor was actually The Last and Curse of Reverence on MTV Headbangers Ball. And I had always known of Emperor because of the Kerrang article. I was like, I know I need to listen to this record, and there's a good chance I'm gonna like it. But then the Lost and Curse of Reverence came out. We did one of our bulk buys from Nuclear Blast, and we ordered the Lost and Curse of Reverence EP and in the Nightside Eclipse. And I'll never forget going to Andre's house, he said, listen to this, and he put the CD in, and the record started with that, fucking crazy intro. And I was so mesmerized, I just like sat down. I was just entranced. I probably sat there for the entirety of the album. Again, old man Ishon and his senile ravings about the weekend aside, when he and his fellow Imperians were young bloods and they produced this masterpiece, they were operating, in my view, on a fucking other plane of existence. I mean, this isn't just one of the best black metal albums of the 90s. This is one of the best black metal albums, period. It's like, it is note perfect. I think the production is incredible. Every single performance on the album sounds really kind of raw and organic and expressive. As much as I think Trim is technically a much better drummer than Faust, I think Faust's drumming I much prefer. Again, there's kind of a real sort of aggression to it. The use of synth and keyboard in this album was really revolutionary for the black metal genre. Like I said before, it blows my mind that these guys were so young when they made it. And actually, like in terms of favorite tracks, my favorite tracks on the album were really kind of the unsung, and it always has been sort of the unsung ones. My very favorite song on the album is "The Burning Shadows of Silence." Those first 3 minutes when it kind of, right before it almost gives you like black metal's answer to a breakdown. Is just fucking insane, because I mean that is literally, again, like that, at the line, at war with humanity. It's like the troops are amassing and clouding the horizon when this comes up. Then you've got songs like Towards the Pantheon, The Majesty of the Night Sky. That fucking lengthy keyboard outro on Majesty of the Night Sky gives me just absolute goosebumps. It reminds me of, or it evokes these images of like walking alone in the snow and there's just nothing in front of you but forest. And it is the album is just phenomenal, absolutely fucking incredible. And the again, it's one of those that you don't think that anyone is ever going to be able to create something like that ever again. As much as I 100% believe the genre has moved forward in a great way. The stuff coming out now is just top tier, and in many ways shits on a lot of the older stuff. But good God, I mean, there's like I think there's also an emotional attachment that I'm always going to have to some of these records, and there's very few that I'll love as much as in the Night Sky, in the Night Side Eclipse.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of this record. It's a top 10 record for me. I almost swapped it out for my one of the other selections. Again, Century Black, still got my Century Black copy. I own 2 copies on vinyl. Saw Emperor's first show ever in New York when they came to America in '98 with the Borknagar, and Witchery played that show. Again, Witchery. Yeah, I mean, that's another band. I wish they would make a return to New York. It's been a minute, so hopefully that could happen one day. But yeah, one of the godfathers of Norwegian black metal, 1000%.
All right, gentlemen. Well, that was a fucking blast. I'm so glad that we finally did this, and I'm glad that Mike S gave me the idea to plagiarize and use on my podcast for ratings and fame. But we will have to do. I was about to say, what say you guys we do in 6 to 8 months' time, depending on schedules and availability? Let's do the death metal sequel. So best. Yeah,
let's do it sooner than 6 to 8 months. We could be dead in 6 to 8 months. Come on, man. 6 to 8 months.
Oh, yeah, I was about to say nuclear Armageddon could have hit us in 6 to 8 months. Yeah. Well, maybe early next year, because Mike and I are definitely doing top 10 of 2022. But yeah, we should definitely do another 666 and do death metal. And then I was thinking, let's not stop there. Let's do the noughties as well, because 2000 to 2009 there was some fucking genius records that came out there.
Down 100%, man. Let's do it.
Okay. Did you guys? Well, I remembered. I have my almost made the cut choice. Do you have an almost made the cut choice?
Yes, I do.
This one's going to be a shocker. Well, maybe not a shocker.
Metallica Load.
No, it is Cradle of Filth's Principle of Evil Made Flesh. I love this record.
You can be 100%. Fucking glad you didn't include that.
100%.
Yeah.
It's the best thing this band has ever done. I actually back the first 4 releases from Cradle of Filth. I was first exposed to them when this record came out. through mixtape, and then the CD finally hit my hands in, I think, early '95. I was very gothy metalhead around that time. I was very into Interview with the Vampire and Bram Stoker's Dracula. I still am. I just don't have the hair anymore. This record and this kind of time period just is super nostalgic for me. I love the Britishness of this record. I'm very into British horror. I'm into Hammer. I'm into the whole Anathema, Cradle of Filth kind of crew that was happening back then. This is a great fucking record. And I'm sorry, Jackie, it's a great record.
I will confess, I did quite like it when it came out. I liked Vampire when it came out as well. And then I think so. I got into them around about the same time as the getting into everything else. But I think it was getting deeper down the Norwegian Scandinavian rabbit hole that kind of
it changed you up a bit.
Yeah, and I have always had a preference towards shit that sounds filthy and nasty and even in my formative years before this, Psalm 69 was like an album no one was into, but like when I heard it for the first time and I heard Just One Fix, I was like, Jesus Christ, this is good. It's like there's nothing like there's no redemption on the song. It's just bludgeoning fucking mean hatred for the whole thing. But yeah, I think it's a good record. There are quite a few others I think that would have made my list before, but I get why you're putting it on, and it's very highly influential too.
Oh yeah, and it was also Marduk's Opus Nocturne. It was also almost that's my favorite Marduk record. So yeah,
yeah, I'm not surprised, Mike, because I know knowing you, I know that you're a big fan of Cradle of Filth. I never was able to get into them, man, and I tried. I like Danny Filth. Like I've interviewed him before. Nice guy, but yeah.
What was your almost, Mike? Your almost.
Okay. So I had a couple. I'll just run them down real quick. So I got a Hemlock Funeral Mask.
Great record.
I've got a Absu Son of Tipperath. That almost made the top 6. Samael Blood Ritual. Immortal Battles in the North. That was on there just in retrospect, and it did not make it because I didn't like it when it came out, so I'm like, I wanted to be, authentic about my selections here. Marduk Panzer Division Marduk almost made number 6. That's how close it was. And that's not my favorite record by them because I like the post 2000 stuff a little bit more.
So, yeah, me too.
Yeah. And that's mine.
My ones. So Ceremony of Opposites by Sam Owl was definitely on the list.
That's in the top 10.
Triarchy of the Lost Lovers by Rotten Christ, for sure, incredible record. I'm trying to think what else. Pentagram by Gorgoroth, definitely bears some merit. Frost by Enslaved, absolutely fucking incredible record. Trying to think what else did I mull? Like there were a couple of Absu records that I was kind of like, should I put this on? Should I not? I mean, it really took me going back and listening to every single record that was on the short list, again, just to kind of calibrate what, how I felt about it. But I think the one that probably came closest to being included was Ceremony of Opposites. I think it's not grown old as gracefully as the other records that I mentioned. There's a couple of tracks on there that now, when I listen to it, I think is actually quite weak. But then there's also songs like Flagellation, Crown, and songs like that are fucking genius.
They did a U.S. tour in '94 for that record with Cannibal Corpse, the Last Barnes tour and Ceremony, and their only U.S. proper tour. It was fucking great, man. A Ceremony of Opposites is a fucking wonderful record. Love that record.
Well, Blood Ritual is like almost it's almost a I'm almost split down the middle on those two. Like I prefer the original After the Sepulture, for example, than I do the re-recording they did for the Rebellion EP. I think the kind of the minimalism that they took on the original recording, I think works a lot better for that song than the kind of flair they added to it later. But yeah, great. They used to be a great band. Not nowadays, not so much.
Yeah.
But also, later on when they started with the love songs and songs like Moon, Skin and shit like that, like I'm too much of a Neanderthal to get into shit like that. I just always have been. hence why so much of my like transition into heavier stuff came via Phil Anselmo, because when I was like 11, 12, 13 years old, like the day I heard Walk was it's like for most people when they hear just about every other heavy band, like when I heard Walk, I was like, oh my God, this is what I've been searching for my whole life. So.
That's great.
Mike,
All
I'm
right, guys.
surprised that, just real quick, Mike, I'm surprised you didn't have an Impaled Nazarene record on this.
Okay. This was so fucking hard, guys. This was so hard. Impaled Nazarene are one of my favorite black metal bands ever. Okay. Low-key obsessed with them. But I wanted to include Dawn as the oddball choice that obviously, I mean, Jackie has never even heard of them, which I think is actually a good thing. I really think you're going to like them. Impaled Nazarene it was just like I said, they were there, and actually the album Rapture was there. That's like my favorite Impaled Nazarene record from '98. But yeah, I think maybe part of me went a little mix of pedestrian mixed with like, what do I listen to like all the time, and like what was like monumental to me coming up. So it was just, I don't know. This was so hard. Death metal is going to be even harder, to be honest. This list may change. It's just one of those things, man. When you're so into something, it's like, how do you narrow it down, right?
I'm a big fan of Impaled Nazarene as well. My favorite Impaled Nazarene album is Road to the Octagon. I think that when I heard Enlightenment Process for the first time, there's a lyric on there. Like I'm always big on how lines get delivered, and the way that he delivers the line, blood sacrifices must be made in order to create darkness. It's so fucking stupid, but it is so brilliant. It's like
Dude,
brilliant
Mika
in
is
its
hilarious, man.
like
Mika on
caveman.
Oh my God. Yeah, he's the singer Mika from Impaled Nazarene. He's a Facebook friend and an Instagram. I follow him on Instagram. He's an outspoken cat, man. Sometimes he posts really funny stuff.
Well, that intro they had for the last record, where they had that fucking lunatic from that. He's like he's not a traveling preacher. He's like a televangelist that does the whole, like, he's got the woman there who talks about he put his penis in my mouth.
Oh, what a sick open. Yeah, disturbing opener from the last LP.
Genius.
The last LP is awesome, by the way. Eight-Headed Serpent. Yeah, crazy.
Quick one before we wrap up. What do you guys have coming up that you wanna plug or talk about? What are you going to be talking about next on Necromaniacs?
Oh,
well, we're keeping true to our coverage of Dr. Rob Zombie, and we're going to be talking about the monsters. The Hellraiser episode is going to be coming up, and some other stuff that's not. Maybe Mike, what else we got?
We're going to cover Halloween, the last Halloween. We got to try to squeeze in Barbarian. I need to see it. But immediately coming out will be Monsters and Hellraiser. We have our Rob Zombie obsession on the show. I heard nothing. I've literally heard almost nothing but terrible things about Monsters. I'm going to watch it today. I'm giving it the open-minded, shut out the noise, that I need to do for it.
You son of a bitch. You haven't even watched it yet.
No, not yet. No, not yet. Mike, okay. I'm going to be fresh for Monday.
Monday. Okay. All right.
One of the only movies I ever walked out of because I thought it was such a load of shit, and I've never been able to understand a single positive comment I've read about it, is The Devil's Rejects. I watched it. I was like, this feels like it was written by a fucking 10-year-old. Like when I was writing, like I went through this period at school where I was, you have to write like an essay or a short story for school, and I tried writing, what they'll give you like this subject line like sunsets or some bullshit like that, and I would always try and write what I thought the teacher would like. And I remember being devastated when I got a really bad mark on something that I wrote specifically, to try and impress the teacher. And so I thought, okay, fuck it. Now I'm just going to write the most violent, gory, horrible stuff I can. I started writing these short horror stories. And what I wrote there, I think, is on a par with the crap that I saw in The Devil's Rejects.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because Mike, remember when we went to go see 30
31.
31,
Yeah.
and at we had this whole storyline going to see it in Times Square and all that. So
On the podcast, yeah.
yeah, so we went to go see that, and there was a filmed Q&A after that. And Rob Zombie actually admitted to writing the script in like a half an hour in like an afternoon.
Yeah.
And I was like, it shows, man. It shows.
In 5 minutes, he wrote that script. That's his worst movie, I think, by the way. I think that might be his worst. I literally think Devil's Rejects is the best thing that man has ever done, actually. I love that movie. So
I mean, the worst was seeing what he did to Halloween. I mean, that was, again, I like Rob Zombie's music very much, actually, and I think him as a dude, when I see him interviewed and stuff, he seems like a nice guy. But if I were to ever get into a position of absolute political authority for what he did to the Halloween franchise, prison. There's no two ways about it. So, he gets carted off immediately.
Jackie, you're going to have to listen to Mike and I's discussion about those films. I'm gonna send you some old episodes. We might change your mind. We might change your mind on Rob Zombie's Halloween 1 and 2.
All right, I will do. No bullshit, by the way. I say it a lot of my podcasts, but no kidding. My favorite podcast of the week. It's the one I look forward to most, and it's the one that, like, there's a lot of podcasts where I'll go like, okay, I'm busy with something now, whatever the case may be. I'll listen to this later. But I never put Necromaniacs on the back burner. It's always the first thing I listen to.
I appreciate that, man. We appreciate that. And like I said, you're the only, like, Into the Necrosphere is literally the only music related podcast I listen to.
Oh, that's awesome, man. I greatly appreciate that. As I said, I feel so fortunate. Maybe as I'm getting older, I get more sentimental about these things, but I feel so fortunate not only to, have made the friendships that I've made with this podcast, but just like, when I started it, I didn't think that I thought I was going to interview a bunch of unsigned bands for the most part, and that was going to be it. But it's, this year especially, it's been nuts, and it's thanks to, being invited on your podcast. Katie helped out an awful lot. A lot of that has helped legitimize it. And so, it's been easier to get people on. Like now I'm at a place where it's been months since I've had to even scour for guests. I've got enough people that want to come on that I could probably keep myself busy until February, March next year.
Dude, the Gregor McIntosh episode was great for me. I'm a Paradise Lost fanboy, and that was a great listen. I was stoked for that.
I'd say that might have come out ever so slightly from my side when I spoke to him too. It was nuts doing that interview also, because again, like I cannot tell you how big of a fan I am of that band. And Gothic, to me, like when I heard that for the first time, it just blew my mind. So you're sitting there thinking like, this dude actually wrote that. It was crazy.
It saddens me how many Americans, Mike Hill, don't know who that band is.
Really? I feel like they're, well, man, maybe just because I only talk to people like me and you that people are big fans of them. Yeah, I guess you're right.
Like I know metalheads that are like, like I'll try to post some bangers from Icon and Draconian Times. Like I've posted Draconian Times songs and go, if you listen to metal, you need to listen to this song. And it's like, a lot of people are like, oh, what is this? And it's like, yeah, I need more metalheads in my life, for fuck's sake, maybe. I don't know. But I do think they are, America, criminally underrated in the scheme of things. Everybody knows who they are in the death doom metal world. Everybody knows Paradise Lost. But in the bigger scope, to me, they should have been 5 times fucking bigger in America. I'll always maintain that.
So some of the more entertaining, probably the most entertaining episodes is when you have Katie on, because like she rules, man. And like it's such a pleasure working with her over at Season of Mist, and her being our point of contact for all the PR stuff, and she's just cool to hang out with at shows too. I mean, she's always like whenever there's like we play locally in New York or Philly or Jersey, she's always there. And to see her at shows down in Philly and stuff like that, it's great. She's just a cool person to hang out with, too.
Yeah, and she's it's nice with her because like I've said before, I always when I record an episode, I just let the conversation go where it wants to go, right? Sometimes you have to you have to prompt the person into a direction, but I never really try and kind of coerce the conversation anywhere. But with her, what's great is I think she and I think on pretty similar wavelengths about a lot of things. So when we start talking, it's like you almost forget that it's a podcast. You just go into everything. And it's some of it's cultural, some of it's music, some of it's politics. But yeah, it was a blast having her on last time, and I'll definitely we have spoken offline. We'll definitely do something again at some point in the not too distant future. It's only so much 2.5 hour fucking setting fire to everything that people can take, though. So like I'm careful with some of those because I can't have every single episode be like that. But like the Sam Bean one or the Nas Alchemist one, those were pretty incendiary. So I don't like they're some of my favorite episodes to do, but you kind of don't want people to start thinking that's the only thing that the show is about, because a lot of it is about just the scene I love and talking about that. It's kind of talking about what I feel like talking about at the time.
Yeah,
that's good, man.
Yeah.
So, but no, I appreciate the kind words. And as I said, man, one of the best things, and I'm loath to talk about it too much because I don't want to sound like some navel gazing dickhead, but this community that we've built up, and this legion, the Horsemen of the podcast apocalypse, it's fucking brilliant. And what's the best about it is totally organic, nothing planned. It just kind of sprouted up.
It did just happen. It's great, Yeah, Jackie, I love the news segment of your podcast. Is like my favorite. I love it.
Yeah.
I fucking love it.
I mean, that could be a whole other show. Like you could actually post 2 episodes a week, and one be the interview part and the other be the news rants. And it would be, I mean, I like having them in one shot on Tuesday, but you can also, if you wanted to do something like that, I think it'd be awesome too,
Yeah, I toyed with the idea. And then, when I put out an episode that doesn't have the new stuff on, then I kind of feel like I'm doing half a job, I don't know. It's just a mental thing, but I love doing the news segments, and I legit try and avoid as much like reading the news as I possibly can. So most of the time, I'll normally say if it's not the case, but most of the time when I'm listening to those songs, I'm hearing them for the first time. So I kind of want to try and give people as authentic a reaction as I possibly can. And also sometimes I do think I'm so freewheeling in them. I kind of go, okay, well, you can pretty much forget ever being able to interview that band or having anyone from that band on the podcast because you've run them down so many times. But that also doesn't really matter. There's a lot of much better stuff that I want to get on. I'm hopefully going to have the Veil Burner guys on because that's been one of my most exciting finds, I'd say, of recent months. Like those 3 singles they've released so far, fucking brilliant.
Oh yeah, I started exploring their catalog too, as well as Black Lava, who they're on Season of Mist too, so that's pretty cool.
Oh, but that last Black Lava single, man, that is just, it's so nasty. Like just it sounds filthy, and it sounds it's like Clandestine being covered by a black metal band.
Yeah,
it's just
totally.
genius.
All right, check them out.
All right, guys, thank you again so much. What a pleasure, and
Thank you,
I will
Jackie.
speak to you guys again very soon.
All right,
Cheers.
gents. Have a good weekend.
Care.
Take care. Bye.
Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.
I could not possibly have concluded such an epic conversation with any other song. The song, of course, The Majesty of the Night Sky. The band was Emperor, and the record In the Nightside Eclipse, my and Mike Hill's favorite black metal release of the 1990s, and I can assure you there was no prior calibration or collusion. That just happened to be a really funny coincidence, as was the Mysteriis Dom Sathanas. But what a great conversation. I dropped these guys a line straight after the chat, and I said that was some of the most fun I've had recording a podcast, maybe ever. And we will definitely do it again. I think the next one is probably going to be best death metal of the 1990s. Then we'll tackle the noughties. Maybe we'll do something around maybe thrash metal of the 1980s. There's a lot that we can do with this. So, really, really fun talking to them. I will post the links to their various Bandcamps in the description of the podcast as well. So make sure you go check out Tomb, Scorpion Throne, and Inhuman. And of course, you should be subscribed to Necromaniacs. It genuinely is my favorite podcast of the week. I am very much looking forward to hearing what they think of Halloween Ends. I actually watched it this past weekend, and I really liked it. I know it's gotten a bit of a bad rap on the socials and on a couple of review websites, but maybe it's because I wasn't expecting much after Halloween Kills. But I actually thought after I'd originally watched Halloween Kills, Halloween Ends is the kind of movie I thought they should have made instead of Halloween Kills. It's kind of like it has an aftermath type feel where there's an amount of reflection on what's happened over the course of the preceding film. Really, I think they could have just ditched Halloween Kills altogether, and with a couple of adjustments, Halloween Ends would have been a nice bookend to that previous Halloween reboot. But cool movie. Like I said, I'm curious to hear what the mics think of it. I believe Jeff is going to be on that episode as well. But I would strongly recommend that you ignore the moaning and go check it out. It's not perfect. It's not Hereditary or The Exorcist or The Exorcist 3, which in my opinion are all perfect horror movies. But it is very enjoyable. Right, folks, I did promise you a news rant, so I would suggest that right around now you tell the weak and the cowardly, the soy boys and the losers to run for cover as we head over to Metal Storm for my weekly news rant. So first up on Metal Storm, Kanonenfieber, I would assume is how I pronounce that, have premiered a new lyric video. It says here, German Black Death outfit Kanonenfieber have shared a lyric video for the new song Der Fusilier 1 from the upcoming 2-track EP Der Fusilier. It premiered via Black Metal Promotion, a channel which you guys definitely need to check out on the reg if you have not done so, or if you don't do so already. I discover an absolutely extraordinary amount of new music on there. A lot of it very good. There's a lot of fucking bullshit that gets posted on there as well, but that's that's par for the course with these sorts of things. But let's listen to what Kanonenfieber sounds like. No idea what these guys sounds like. I've never heard them before, but there's some World War I looking shit here, so might be interesting.
Die umfangreichen, schwierige und opfervolle Offensive in den winterlichen Karpaten zur Befreiung von Chemical ist unsere allertiefsten Schmerzen, See und Eis zusammenbrach. Dieser der Angriff überlegener feindlicher Macht folgt. Des ruhmreichen Kämpfen bis in die zweite Armee stand, der Feind sich völlig verblutet hatte.
That is very excellent. That is very, very cool. I've just been having a gander on Metal Archives here as that was playing. So Kanonenfieber is apparently German for Kanonenfieber. This is a one-man black metal project signed currently to Noisebringer Records, and he or she has already put out a full-length that came out in 2021. That was called Menschen Mule. And then another single called Stop the War that came out in 2022, Yankee Division, which came out also this year in 2022, and now obviously Der Fusilier. But yeah, I really like that. I like that melody at the very beginning. I like the build up, the kind of tension that you get there, and then when the song actually kicks in, it is fucking excellent. Really, really cool stuff, and again, very impressive that it's one guy. So let's give it another minute or so. But very, very impressed with this, and I'll definitely have to go check out that full length record as well. Something gives me the impression this guy's a big fan of Greg McIntosh as well. That kind of doomy breakdown there definitely has, Greg McIntosh vibes to it. Whether off Strigoi or Valenfire or early Paradise Lost. But then he's kind of got that almost Deathspell Omega discordance thrown in there as well. Excellent stuff. Really, really good. That's a nice find, because now the problem with starting off the news segment with a song that good is that so much of what I'm going to hear thereafter is going to be a disappointment. But anyway, we might grab us a little palate cleanser and see where that takes us. Elu Vieti. Again, a name that I am pretty sure I butchered the pronunciation of. Swiss folk legends Illuviati present a new song and video for their newest single, Exile of the Gods. The song can be purchased from any of these locations. I'm not massively a fan of folk, so maybe it's a good idea to listen to the song so that the expectations are brought back down for whatever we listen to after this. The thumbnail here is of a pretty fierce-looking woman. Now, I did speak ill not too long ago of like this, female-fronted symphonic metal bands, and I just want to clarify. It's not because I'm a misogynist or because I think that women have no place in metal. I think there's a lot of women in metal that are very, very cool and do really interesting things. What I would say my gripe is with a lot of the symphonic kind of female-fronted metal is the fact that they all seem to follow the same formula, and this would be true whether they had men fronting them as well. As a matter of fact, there are men fronting those types of bands, and they all sound the same as the formula I'm about to describe, which is normally, heavy riff at the start, then some sort of clean played riff for the verse, and then we kick back into rock when the song gets to the bridge or the chorus. And that to me is just, I hate predictability. It's part of why I dislike bands like In Flames so much. It's just not for me. It doesn't sound threatening. It doesn't sound like there's menace. You guys know the kind of music I like. I would expect after listening to a couple of these news rants. But it's not. It's so maybe I think the point that I'm trying to make is it's not necessarily the fact that there's women in the band. It's the fact that there's so many of these bands follow exactly the same formula, and I just find it to be fucking irritating and annoying. But let's see, maybe Illuviati surprises us. So that formula that I just described, there you go. I mean, it's made worse by the fact that they've got that fiddle there. And, that's something where you could play that to your devoutly Christian grandmother, and she's probably going to listen to it and go, yeah, that's not so bad, Jackie. A little bit fast for me, but, at least these guys have got some musical talent, as opposed to Deicide. But, I mean, I didn't like the melody. I thought the heaviness over the fiddle sounded ridiculous. I mean, it genuinely sounded hysterical to me. And then we've got this fucking saccharine, anodyne little verse. I mean, her voice is good. There's no doubting that. She certainly can sing. She can hold a tune. But man, oh man, this is not my kind of music. I'll give it another 30 seconds, but so far this sounds like complete and utter shite.
And outcast, shame stabbing, guilt's crushing, and darkness has fallen. What have we done? Our hands stained with their blood. Injustice has befallen. We have become like deadly shit.
Shite crap. By the way, they also seem to kind of be making some sort of environmentalist point with a music video. You see these swooping shots of coal power plants and things like that, and yet they themselves are surrounded by these massive fire pits. So, anyways, I don't know if you guys saw, but there was recently, I think this past week, these two idiots went into the London National Gallery and threw tomato soup at I think it was a Van Gogh painting, and then glued themselves to the wall. And when the cameras finally descended upon them, proceeded to try and do a Greta Thunberg and, lecture us all about how we have to stop fossil fuels immediately and blah, blah, blah. I think those people should be sent straight to the gulags, which they believe to be, the very gulags they believe to be a fabrication of the CIA's design. I mean, there are generally people that, in spite of the fact that there's a myriad of evidence about how terrible the gulags were, survivors from the gulags talking about how horrible it was, they seem to think that it's CIA propaganda. It was actually wonderful. So I skipped over the cult last time round, and I've decided that I'm not going to do it again because it's my podcast, and I really like the cult. I think they're a band that a lot of people sleep on because they had a couple of popular songs like "She Sells Sanctuary," but I'm very sorry. I don't give a fuck whether all you listen to is Dark Throne. If you hear the song "Edie," or you hear "Wild Hearted Son" or something like that, you can't help but like it. So I've been curious to hear what new cult music sounds like for a while now. I see they've just released a music video for their new single featured on the band's new album, Under the Midnight Sun. The single is Black Mirror, and it's out now via Black Hill Records. Like I said, love me the cult. Let's hear if in 2022 these guys still have it.
Forget what you know.
Ian Astbury sounds fucking sensational. I was trying to see while that was going on about how old this guy is, but his voice still sounds just absolutely fantastic. 60, which is nuts. I mean, he sounds just as good as he always has. I love the melody, especially during the verse. I like that almost slightly like post-punk kind of guitar line that they have while the verse is playing. This is fucking superb. It genuinely is absolutely superb. I'm gonna have to listen to this record properly. I mean, I've not really paid much attention to any of their new stuff, to be honest with you. I actually originally thought that this new album is kind of a reunion for them, but it's not. They've done records, and I think there was one in 2012 and one in 2016. I didn't pay any attention to them, but like, you know, their early stuff I loved, you know, when I was a young man, and it turns out that they are still pretty good. Okay, let's move on. Fit for a King share new music video. That's an immediate skip. However, I'll tell you what will not be a skip. Biohazard's original lineup has reunited for 2 festivals next year. I have spoken in the past about my thoughts on this band. With the exception of Rammstein, which no band can compete with unless you've got that insane amount of money to spend, you know, which very few bands do. I don't actually think there's a better live band that I've ever seen than Biohazard. You know, and this comes from somebody who, I think the first time that I saw them, I was planning to leave because I was tired from having seen the bands previously. First time I saw them was the Eastpak Resistance tour in 2003. And on the bill was Stamping Ground, who were fantastic. Hatebreed, who were at that particular night absolutely on top of their game. Then Agnostic Front, which was also absolutely awesome. At the end of Agnostic Front, I was like, you know, these 3 bands have just absolutely taken it out of me. You know, I'm tired. I want to go home. Let's just watch one song of Biohazard, see what it's like, and then we'll fuck off. Within about 3 seconds of Biohazard being on stage, Billy Graziade had already jumped into the crowd for the first time. When the band started, the level of energy in that venue went to levels I've never seen before. I mean, the floor of the London or the Kentish Town Forum turned into an absolute tumble dryer, and if you were not part of the tumble dryer, you were made to be part of the tumble dryer. But they were incredible, just absolutely fucking incredible. And I've seen them about I think 3 times since, and they've never let me down. They just are. Like when they're on form, and when they're playing those old songs live, you know, Shades of Grey, Wrong Side of the Tracks, which is, you know, to me one of the best songs they can play live. You know, any of the first 3 records, when they play those songs live, it is just unfucking real. So it says here, hardcore punk rodents, Biohazard punk rodents. Anyway, sorry. Hardcore punk rodents, Biohazard will reunite with their classic lineup of Billy Graziade, Bobby Hamble, Danny Schuler, and Evan Seinfeld for an appearance at next year's Bloodstock Open Air Festival at Catton Park, Walton-on-Trent, United Kingdom. Biohazard will headline Sunday night, August 13th, 2023, on the Sophie Lancaster stage. Biohazard will also perform at the Dynamo Metal Fest, set to take place August the 19th to the 20th in Eindhoven, Netherlands. I think they've also now been confirmed for Brutal Assault. So I've never been to Bloodstock. Maybe this is the year that I go. But very excited about that. I mean, I'm less excited about them making new music because I feel like, for whatever reason, they just have not been able to recapture what they did on those first 3 records again. You know, they did that last record. I can't even remember what it was called, but it was just complete shite from start to finish, garbage. But those first 3 albums are superb. Another hardcore classic, maybe a little bit less prolific than Biohazard, but All Out War have announced a new album. New York's All Out War announced Celestial Rot, which will be released on February the 3rd, 2023 via Translation Lost Records. Celestial Rot is the band's 8th full-length offering containing 10 tracks of pure oral devastation. No songs released so far. They've got some really nice album art here, which looks suitably grim and badass. I will say, I mean, these guys are legends, but they've never, you know, they're not a band that I listen to an awful lot. They're a little bit like Sworn Enemy to me, where they've got like one good song per record. There's never been a record of theirs that I've listened to and gone, this entire thing start to finish is fantastic. All right, let's move on. Avataria have announced lineup changes. German gothic black metal band Avataria is searching for a new keyboardist, guitarist, and bassist. With a statement, guitarist Soleil Bunakwa, keyboardist Carlos Balfon, and bassist Andreas Tuleski have left the band. Don't know what Avataria sounds like. I am almost regretting even bothering to read that headline, but let's move on. Let's see where there's some new music we can actually listen to. Again, like we started off with something really, really cool on that first on that first tune. So we're going to need to get something that's pretty special to top that. But Exhumed are streaming yet another new track off of their forthcoming record. Exhumed return from the depths with their macabre new album To the Dead, out on October the 21st via Relapse Records. In advance of the record's release, the band is streaming the track Disgusted, which you can check out here. Now, I think we have agreed that it is 1-for-1 on Exhumed so far. First song was pretty decent. Second song, pretty dull. I like the aesthetic that they've done with the two music videos, where for the lyric videos, it's like, they look like old newspaper articles. I think that's pretty cool. But in terms of the, I think in terms of the actual music, it's very competent second tier death metal, and it has its place without a shadow of a doubt. As far as I could listen to this in the background and not hate it, but there's also the matter of bands like Avaturn and Werewolves raising the bar for what death metal should sound like in 2022 exponentially beyond what Exhumed have done. And so too a band like Immolation. I mean, Immolation are older than Exhumed, unless I'm mistaken, and yet they have done something this year with their new record that just sounds just so much more lively, and like they still feel like they've got something to prove. This to me so far has sounded. And maybe there will be some Exhumed fans that disagree with me, but so far it sounded to me like the band is on autopilot, and I'm not a fan of autopilot, but I am willing to give them another chance. So this is track 3. Let's see if this is the tiebreaker. That's not bad. Gets to the point pretty quickly, of course. There is a very tangible old school Carcass influence going on here. I think the production suits their style quite well. It's quite sort of open and almost analog. It's not bad. Again, is it something that's going to really, am I going to have sleepless nights before October the 21st because I can't wait to hear what it sounds like? No, absolutely not. But I'm not hating it either. So I think this one is a draw. So I think there's 1-1. We'll give it another 60 seconds and see if we can tip over into the win column. But like right now, like I said, I feel borderline indifferent towards the song. It says your frontman Matt Harvey comments, our final single from To the Dead is a veritable labyrinth of riffs that mirrors the lyrical content, dragging the listener kicking and screaming on a descent into homicidal mania. If you make it through this track alive after it slices, dices, chops, and rips your senses, you deserve a beer before you dive back in for another listen. It's an Exhumed track. You know what to do. Crank up the volume, crank open a cold one, and shed some brain cells with us. I would say in terms of death metal's second tier from the old school, this is definitely better to me than some of the stuff that I shan't name any names actually, just because I'm pretty sure if I go on a tear now about certain bands from that generation, I might step on a few toes. But either way, I'll shut the fuck up and let's listen to another 60 seconds of Exhumed. Here's what I will say about Exhumed, very much to their favor. I would take this song and all the songs that I've heard of Exhumed off this new record so far 1,000,000 times over the fucking crap that you hear on something like Flesh God Apocalypse or Cataclysm or something like that. I mean, those death metal bands to me are, I have a similarly visceral reaction to those bands that Chris Barnes has to the new school of death metal. That to me just doesn't. It sounds like guys pretending to play heavy music, whereas there's no pretense here. I mean, you can hear these dudes are into what they do. So yeah, maybe that alone is enough to tip the song over into the win column for Exhumed. I'm going to talk about something completely random just for a second, purely because I've been getting DMs whilst I'm recording this from a top-notch dude. A lot of you guys contact me on social media and ask me hi-fi related questions, which I love, by the way. So anytime you want to do that, if you're upgrading your system or you just want some advice, please don't hesitate to ask me about it, because I've been through various iterations of my own system, and I think I've landed on something right now which just sounds just extraordinary. The recent thing to blow my mind completely is, and I'll hold it up to the camera if you're watching this on YouTube, but I'll tell you the name as well. It's the purple fuse by a company called Synergistic Research. So I'll hold the box up to the camera. You can see there, nice shiny purple. When I bought my Diablo 300 and my Pantheon speakers, the proprietor of Nentronics, which is the excellent hi-fi dealership that I bought all my stuff from, brought this for me to try out. It is a F13A fuse that he said, makes a huge difference regardless of where in your system, where in the chain you put it in. I thought, or my initial sense was you were talking shit, and a fuse can't make a difference. I mean, even though I've got upgraded hi-fi cables and I've spent a huge amount on interconnects and on speaker cable, I still thought to myself, a fuse, that's snake oil. And there's a lot of snake oil in the audiophile game. Some of what is called snake oil, I don't believe is snake oil, but anyway. So I had this lying around for about 3 months. Yesterday, I finally had a few minutes, so I thought, let me just to prove to myself that I'm right, I will put this into the AudioQuest NRGZ cable that I use currently for my Griffin Diablo integrated amplifier. So I took out the existing fuse, put this in, started listening, and within 5 minutes, my girlfriend, who is not by any stretch of the imagination an audiophile, walked into the room and said, "What have you done to the hi-fi?" And I said, "What do you mean?" And she said, "It sounds so much cleaner." And she is not an audiophile by any stretch of the imagination. I have subjected her to various test listening sessions, and she, to her credit, and I love her for it, but she tries to entertain my fancy and my hobby. But the fact that she noticed this without me saying anything tells you something extraordinary. And I spent probably about 2 or 3 hours listening to music yesterday, and as the fuse clearly got more burnt in, the sound just was absolutely fucking extraordinary. Like, there's just greater definition around all of the instruments. There seems to be a deeper sound stage. The noise floor is lower. I couldn't fucking believe it. I mean, these things retail for £190. If you have £190 lying around, I'm pretty sure whoever you buy this from will take it back if it doesn't make a difference to your system. But what I would say is pick up one, stick it in the fuse, which it's pretty easy to do if you haven't done it before, but stick it in the fuse of whatever cable you have running your integrated amplifier, and your mind will be fucking blown. Mine was blown. I like I said, I thought this was going to be total crap, but it most definitely was not. And this is not a sponsor plug. It's literally nothing other than you guys ask me questions, and I don't have the time to respond to every single one of you individually and say, get yourself a purple quantum fuse by Synergistic Research. Now, that nerd shit aside, I see that Storm Ruler have revealed yet another video. The new album is actually out now, so I'll listen to the album properly, and maybe I'll have that in next week's reviews or release wrap-up. Woods of Desolation have released Far From Here, their new music video. The video for Woods of Desolation's song Far From Here has just been released via the official Season of Mist YouTube channel. Far From Here comes from their new album, The Falling Tide, which will be released on December the 9th. It has been a bumper year for Season of Mist in 2022 so far, I have to say. Looking at my worksheet, and yes, I do have a worksheet for my top 30 of 2022, because that's how seriously I take it. And again, I want to stress, part of the reason that I wait until and why I will always wait from now on until January of the following year to do the best of, is because unlike these other motherfuckers that release top 40s or top 20s of the year in fucking October or in November, I'm not doing it for the clicks. I'm doing it because I actually like the music. So, I'm doing it so that people can, so that we can actually reflect on all the good stuff that came out, over the course of the past year. Like I said, maybe discover a few new things, etc. And also, when I did it at the end of the year, what I always found is there was a bunch of stuff that came out in December that I ended up missing and that I was sorry about not including in the list. So, going back to Season of Mist, I mean, looking at this worksheet so far, Strigoi they put out, Black Anvil they've put out or will be putting out, Black Lava they will be putting out, they will also be putting out, or they have put out Guerilla. They're going to be putting out this Woods of Desolation, Drudkar they're going to be putting out. So that's 5 records that could very easily be on my top 30, which is no bad shakes for that label. So well done them. And again, Mike mentioned it, but big shout out to Katie. By no small stretch, one of the best people in the music industry. In my view, she should be getting headhunted by other labels fucking 24/7. But let's go on to Woods of Desolation. I don't think I actually listened to the previous song. I might be mistaken, but I don't think that we've had them on the News Rant before. So let's hear what this sounds like. That's not bad. I'm starting to think that maybe I have listened to one of these songs before. Either way, I can't quite remember, which maybe isn't the best sign. Just having a look on Metal Archives now. So this is a one-man project from Wollongong in New South Wales, Australia. Again, you guys know my affinity for bands from Australia. The last full length that he put out was a record called As the Stars, which came out in 2014. And then prior to that, he put out Torn Beyond Reason in 2011 and Toward the Depths in 2008. I think the song that I've just heard so far isn't bad. Those vocals will grate on me a little bit. I feel like again, they have their place, but it's a little bit like Karg, that other band that we listened to last week, where like if those vocals were there as a go-between between something else, maybe deep growls or more traditional black metal vocals, then they would be cool. It'd be a nice way to break things up. But a 7-minute song where the vocal style stays like that from start to finish, I'm not so sure about that. So let's give it another 60 seconds and let's see. I like this. I mean, like I said, vocals will take some getting used to, but I can see them growing on me. But I like that. I like what I heard there. I think the melody is cool. I like the production. I think there's a lot there to like. Kalman Konteja. Apparently, Finnish raw black metal outcasts have announced their new album, Vionut, out on October the 31st on tape and digital formats via Wolfspell Records. Let's have a gander and see if they've got a song. They do, but it's on Bandcamp, so I'm not going to listen to it. Let me just also address one quick thing. I had a couple of folks following my conversation with my friend from Ecclese, say that they wanted me to have Mikko Aspa on the podcast. Now, it's one thing to have Nas on because he's a cool dude and he's pretty intense, but the guy's not a fucking lunatic, and I can attest to that, having spoken to him for the better part of 2.5 hours. But Mikko Aspa, it's not just the fact that he has a history of sketchy political beliefs. One thing that I truly despise about the man is the Nicole 12 project that he did, where he's kind of exploring, sexual depravity with kids and stuff like that. Like, there's just so much of what this guy has said that to me sounds like if they investigated his computer hard drive, he'd probably be in a little bit of trouble. And that's just speculation. But either way, I mean, I can base my dislike of the guy on one particular comment that he made on a recent interview with Bardo Mythology, where he talks about how how he's a fan of the pornographer Max Hardcore, and he seems to think that it's cool that Max Hardcore played a song called Shotgun Suicide in the background of a scene that featured a girl who had subsequently killed herself. So from my perspective, as a dad, I'm not against adult entertainment by any stretch of the imagination, but as a father of a young girl, if somebody found her death to be cool or something that they could make light of, I would rip them limb from limb. And frankly, I think Max Hardcore, I know he was in jail for a period of time. I'm sorry that nobody shanked him to death, and I think that anybody that likes any of the stuff that he does, or thinks that it's in any way provocative or cool, the way Mikko has said, I just don't think that there's an overlap in values there. That's really the long and short of it. So there would be nothing for me to say to the guy, because I'd probably just get pissed off talking to him. Like, I'm very flexible on having differences of opinion, as long as there's some degree of overlap in values, which is why I find it easy to talk to people, who vote left or who vote right, because I think when it comes down to talking about values, very often, if you're speaking to somebody sane, you can have that kind of chat quite easily, and you can sort of align on the values, and then maybe you can talk about those things that you differ, where there's a difference of opinion. And I've had many such conversations with people, but like I said, if you think, if you think making light of a girl's suicide, and not to mention the fact that Max Hardcore's videos are fucking so screwed up, it's insane. You've got girls pretending to be 12 years old, being urinated on, vomiting, all that sort of stuff. It's fucked up. People that like it are fucked up too. It's all that's my view. That's my line that I wouldn't have anybody cross. And again, I think personally, you want to talk about degeneracy in Europe and in the Western world. That's a great example of it. Anyway, all right. Agnostic Front share the Eliminator 2020 video. I'll finish up with this one, and then we'll head off to the Democrats' Guide to Rock Music. Eliminator 2020. Originally, the song, of course, appeared on the 1986 album Cause for Alarm. I'm a fucking massive fan of Agnostic Front. I've seen them live many, many times. Had the pleasure of meeting Roger Mireille about probably 12, 13 years ago. He was a super cool dude. I met Vinny Stigma as well. Awesome guy. If you haven't seen them live yet, if you can see them in a small club, you definitely owe it to yourself to do so. Almost all of the times I saw them, with the exception of that Eastpak Resistance show that I mentioned earlier, was at the Underworld in London, which is just perfect for a band like this. Also, I can't remember what the documentary is called, but if you've not seen the documentary yet about Agnostic Front, you definitely should do yourself a favor and check it out. It's one of the best music documentaries I think I've ever seen. And actually, I'm not. It's called The Godfathers of Hardcore, and I'm not ashamed to admit that I had a bit of a lump in my throat watching it, because there's a genuine love between Vinny and Roger, and in the documentary, Roger gets ill. And he's obviously had his health struggles anyway, but he gets ill, and you see the effect that has on Vinny, and it's really touching. But great documentary. Anyway, let's give this a quick listen.
Good evening. We're coming off the bloodiest year in the history of New York, 1784 homicide.
The criminal justice system is probably at its weakest point it's ever been.
Many of those who make good by being bad are nowhere to be seen these days.
Store official was gunned down last week.
People are uptight. Uptight situation here. It seems, with the economy and things the way it's going. So people with tempers are very short.
You believe in Jesus? Well, you're going to meet him.
Absolutely fucking badass. I may not necessarily agree with 100% of what Agnostic Front's sing about, but musically they are absolutely superb. There's a bit of commentary there about, I would assume, the state of New York when that song was originally recorded, and potentially how history is repeating itself currently. New York, from what I can tell, definitely has a massive problem when it comes to an increase in crime. And sadly, they don't seem to have the leadership in place to deal with it appropriately. But then again, my views on dealing with criminality, as I mentioned to Mike Scondotto, is more in line with Judge Dredd than it is with AOC calling out the social workers. So that's just my view on that. It's actually, I've been thinking recently about, because I've mentioned this before on the podcast, I don't like comedy and horror movies at all. I don't like horror comedies, period. I think they're terrible. And I think a lot of that sort of stuff comes from, and maybe this feeds into my view on crime as well, but a lot of that comes from, things that you saw or knew about growing up. And, growing up in a very violent country like South Africa, you definitely do grow up with taking death a lot more seriously, I think, than you do in maybe countries where it's not quite as bad. Like, I would suspect if I had a conversation like this with one of my friends in Mexico, or places like that that also deals with the same degree of crime and violence, maybe they would probably align more with what I think than maybe somebody who grew up in the States. I might be completely wrong, but just my view on that. But I've always seen death as being something very serious. So when it comes to horror movies, I want it to be something. I want death to be something that's treated seriously as well. So there needs to be, for me to enjoy a horror movie, like, I don't want gore exploitation or whatever the case may be, but I want human life to be something that is treated seriously inside that, inside the construct of that movie. Those are my favorite types of horror movies, which is why I like Hereditary so much, or The Exorcist 3 or The Shining or anything like that. Okay, anyway, we're on the Democrats' Guide to Rock Music, and the first headline grabbing my attention. Yeah, Max Cavalera doesn't rule out celebrating other Sepultura albums on special tours. It's paying homage to those records. He notes that he plans on changing all of the lyrics on every single song found on Morbid Visions to fuck all your politics, fuck all your bullshit. Anyway, former Sepultura members Max Cavalera and Igor Cavalera have spent much of the last few years celebrating the band's seminal Beneath the Remains, Arise, and Roots albums by performing them live. Asked in a new interview with That Metal Interview podcast if fans can ever expect to see tours celebrating Sepultura's first 2 LPs, 1986's Morbid Visions and 1987's Schizophrenia, Max said, as transcribed by Blabbermouth, yeah man, of course. Why are they not talking about Chaos AD here? I mean, I would imagine if Max and Igor went on a Chaos AD revival or celebration tour, I mean, that would sell like fucking hotcakes, because, you know, no matter my thoughts on the quality of Max's music and Soulfly and the Cavalera Conspiracy, I saw them a couple of years back doing Refuse Resist, and it fucking blew my mind. I mean, that song live sounds just absolutely incredible. You know, and then you've got so many good songs lately, especially geared to kind of the live setting on Chaos AD. But anyways, he says, yeah, going back to Morbid Visions, the black metal era, I don't imagine that was black metal, or sorry, he refers to Bestial Devastation as the black metal era, which I also don't agree with. That's cool as fuck. I love the raw nature of it. It's raw material. It's much less sophisticated songwriting, much more caveman songwriting, but really powerful, really raw. I would love to do those records, and also Schizophrenia and 1993's Chaos AD. Chaos AD was a big record for us. That was the album that broke the band internationally. It's got great songs like Territory and Refuse Resist, Propaganda. I think when we do the Chaos tour, it'll be a big one. Tell you what song I love of Chaos AD as well, Manifest. Always a bit of a sleeper on that record, because the whole thing is basically just like a sample over, or not a sample, but like spoken word over music. But I always loved it. Like from the moment that I first got that record, that was one of my favorite songs on the album. Trivium's Matt Heafy, Iron Maiden's Steve Harris compared us to Metallica. Boy, was he wrong. Sharon Osbourne on Ozzy's Parkinson's disease diagnosis. Suddenly your life just stops, life as you knew it. Again, regardless of anybody's thoughts on Ozzy, Parkinson's is absolute fucking shitter. I mean, I don't know how else to describe it. It's fucking terrible. You know, and hopefully there's, you know, hopefully he has enough means to make it, or to make his situation more livable than unfortunately some of the other poor folks that are diagnosed with that fucking terrible disease. Wednesday 13 names his favorite Metallica album. In a recent interview with the radioactive Mike Z, host of the 96.7 KCAL FM program Wired in the Empire, Wednesday 13 was asked which Metallica song he could cover if he had to. He responded, as transcribed by Blabbermouth, my favorite Metallica record is And Justice for All. I'm not a giant Metallica fan. I definitely respect them and I know a lot of their stuff, but the And Justice for All record is one of my favorites. I like the Shortest Straw song. I thought that was a cool song. That would probably be the one I would pick if I could cover it. I'd put some real bass in it. Ha ha. I like Injustice for All very much as well. My favorite song on Injustice for All is Eye of the Beholder, which I know is a song that Metallica do not like. But I think it's a good record. And I dither between my favorite Metallica records being either Ride the Lightning or Master of Puppets, depending on the mood that I'm in. I would say 9, or not 9, maybe 3 out of 5 days that you ask me that question, I would say Master of Puppets is the album. And my favorite Metallica song by far, no question, is Seek and Destroy. Especially when they do it live, or especially when they used to do it live, when Jason was still doing some of the verses. I mean, I always thought that sounded so cool. There was a real like fuck off swagger to it when they did it with Jason that is just sadly missing from the band period now. Anyways, addressing some of the criticism that has been leveled at Injustice for All over its production, Wednesday 13 added, to me it had the same production almost. The drums on that record kind of sounded like Anthrax to me, but I was playing those cassettes and stuff through a tiny little boombox that didn't have any bass on it. So I never really paid attention to it like that. I don't think I ever really noticed till people started talking about it for me. Yeah, there's a point there. I think the drums on Injustice for All don't sound a million miles away from the drums on Among the Living. Among the Living just obviously has some very, very clear, clean bass. It's a really well-recorded record, actually. It's a fucking great record. Ted Nugent, we knew Borry wouldn't be able to resist this. Kanye West is a man of great vision. I'm flabbergasted as to why people take what Kanye West says so seriously. And again, this to me is a matter of how much stock do you place in the opinions of somebody who is not an expert in what they're saying. And it doesn't matter whether that person is representative of the left or the right. And this, to me, this kind of thing shows off how full of bullshit partisan people are. People that buy into tribal ideology. They'll hear somebody that says something that they disagree with, and they'll say, "Oh, that person's a fucking asshole." And then they'll hear Aaron Lewis spout some trash on stage, and they'll go, "I don't like Aaron Lewis's music, but he's got some good ideas. He seems pretty switched on," and vice versa. Kanye West is a rapper. No doubt that he's very, very smart at what he does from a music perspective. He's certainly his music's not my kind of music, but he's made a lot of money with it. He's made a lot of money with his business ventures. But is he a politician? Is he an economist? No. Is he a guy who knows how globally how the world works? What the construct of the global geopolitical order looks like at the moment, etc., etc.? The answer is absolutely not. And a lot of these people, when they talk, again, whether it's making a point in favor of the left or the right, they can very rarely provide you with any proof points to support what they're saying, because what they're saying are just sweeping statements that are a distilling of the 3 to 5 news sources they spend the most time with. So if you hear Kanye West, the vast majority of what he's going to say is probably Newsmax, OAP, Fox, and whatever else. If you hear Randy Blythe, it's going to be a distilling of Rachel Maddow, Morning Joe, and Don Lemon on CNN, all of whom are terrible. So, and when I say all of whom, I mean every single one of those news sources that I just mentioned now. So, like I said, why people, place this degree of attention or emphasis on anything that he says, I have no fucking idea. It's no different to me than the warbling of Scully D, Alex Skolnick. Speaking of Scully D, his band Testament's Chuck Billy is slowly working on his debut solo album, I Just Wanted to Be Raw and Real. Chuck Billy is another guy whose voice seems to just get better and better, and he is also, if memory serves me correctly, he has also just celebrated his 60th birthday. But it says here, in a new interview with the 107.7 The Bone radio station, Testament singer Chuck Billy spoke about the progress of the songwriting sessions for his upcoming first ever solo album. He said, as transcribed by blabbermouth.net, I've actually talked to over a dozen guitar players that have songs for me that they're writing and creating, but Testament takes priority first. Once I have time, it's not a big priority. It's just something I'd love to do because I've only written music with Eric Peterson for the last 35 years, and I want to write something and do something that's not Testament, that's totally different. I want it to be old school sounding with dry drums, no samples, no triggers, like the old vinyls we used to have when we were younger. I just want it to be raw and real, one take kind of stuff. So that's in the books, and I'm slowly working on that, but that'll be down the line. I'm not going to go on about how much I love Chuck, but the dude overcame cancer, still sounds like an absolute beast, one of the best vocalists on the face of the earth, all styles, in my opinion. And I'm looking forward to pretty much anything he does. And in 2023, he is definitely on the very top of the list of guests that I want to get on. There's a couple of folks that I want to get on. This week, obviously, Marduk announced that they're putting out a new record. So I'm hoping there's going to be an opportunity for me to get Morgan on the show next year. I would love to get Attila on the podcast next year as well. I would absolutely love to get Chuck Billy on the show. So those are kind of the three big ones. And obviously this year has been a smorgasbord of wish list guests. I mean, I've had Greg McIntosh, Kirk Winstein, Ross Dolan, Shane Embry, Sakis Tollis. The list is fucking endless. It's been nuts. Like I sometimes kind of stop and I go back and look at, David Gray, all these dudes. And I'm like, how did this even happen? Or did this even happen? So, the 2022, I could not have imagined that the year would have been as big from a guest perspective and from a general kind of support for the podcast perspective as it turned out to be. But for sure, those folks I just mentioned now, those are the people I'd love to have most on the show next year. And if there is a chance, I don't think there ever will be, but if there is a chance to get one Philip, Horace, and Salmo on the podcast, that I would like to. Anyways, let's go on. Gojira release a new song, Our Time Is Now. As a matter of principle, it's not a band I want to listen to any longer. They are total crap. Lamb of God's Randy Blythe. People think that their uneducated opinions are just as valid as those of world-renowned experts. He has a point there. As a matter of fact, maybe this is the one we wrap things up with. I mean, I still think that his dreads make him increasingly look like a homeless person, or one of the people that live on the in the tent communities of Los Angeles. But it says here, in a new interview with the Illinois entertainer, Lamb of God frontman Randy Blythe spoke about the humanity's failure to do a total or at least a partial reset following the harrowing experience of the past couple of years during the global pandemic. This is something I'm currently struggling with very hard as I'm writing a new book. I'm working on a new non-fiction book. I wanted to write fiction, but my agent said, you need another non-fiction book. And he was pushing me toward what they call, I guess, an inspirational memoir or whatever. So I'm writing this book, and it's about different perspectives from other people that I've tried to incorporate into my own life and take something from. Something positive from things I have learned from other people other than me. I mean, it's a warbling mess is what that is. It sounds like he smoked weed right before he had that conversation. He continued, things have just gotten screwier and screwier and screwier, and I'm thinking, like, what's the cause of this? Why are people acting the way they do? And I think there's a cult of toxic, narcissistic individualism that has made people think for some reason that their uneducated opinions are just as valid as those of world-renowned experts. And on a bunch of different topics, everything from medicine to foreign policy to economics. I mean, I'm in full possession of the fact that I'm a man of average intelligence, but I'm smart enough and emotionally stable enough to realize that if I don't know something, I need to refer to someone smarter than myself. Again, I think there's some... I agree with him to a certain point. I've said before, I think one of the worst things about social media is that it has made everybody think that they have a voice. But I think the problem is that so many of these so-called experts are, demonstrably bought and paid for. Anthony Fauci, suspect number one. And then as you look at the examples, especially recently, of these people being caught out, the fact that they double down on their lies and double down on their bullshit is part of what leads people to go down the conspiracy theory route. And this is why, what they do and what the governments do is so dangerous and so harmful, because you can't lie to people. You can't get found out in lies or be wrong and never take responsibility for having been wrong so many times, and then start the hand wringing about people not believing you and saying it's such a terrible thing that people no longer believe the mainstream media. It's like, but you guys have openly lied. I mean, again, one of the greatest examples being, that infamous meme of mostly peaceful protests. The guy was talking about that during the BLM riots in 2020, as he stands in the backdrop of a city that looks like something out of a fucking John Carpenter movie. People still believe their eyes, and enough people have common sense to realize that if two and two don't make four in your argument, then something is missing or something is wrong somewhere. And the problem is, like I said, this has happened so many times, and then people double down on the fact that they double down on their lies. They don't take responsibility and say, hey, listen, that vaccine we told you will stop the infection. Well, it turns out that we weren't correct. They just double down on it, or they try and force you by government mandate to do as they say. And so that makes people more skeptical. So in many ways, I agree with what Randy says, but equally, I also think that the politicians and the media in particular have an awful lot to answer for as far as the this kind of toxic cult of individualism, as he calls it, that has been created in the world. I mean, I also think there's another toxic cult that's been created, and that is the toxic cult of this assault on masculinity. I know people are going to hear what I've just said and go, he's repeating Jordan Peterson talking points, but the guy's right. I see so many men walk around, and the way that they approach life is just weak and pointless and cowardly and spineless. And you think to yourself, what would be more dangerous? A guy who's got his life in order and who's focused and disciplined and applies a degree of stoicism to the way that he approaches life, or the guy who's a weak, cowardly, fucking sniveling beta male, who ultimately, when you look at these riots and you look at a lot of the crazy stuff that people will film and post on social media, guys attacking women and stuff like that. I mean, those dudes don't look to me like the kind of man I've just described. You know, the kind of man that, you know, I growing up, you know, was taught to be, and what I continue to aspire to be every single day. They look like fucking weaklings and cowards and guys that are aimless. You know, and guys who have allowed the onslaught on, you know, traditional masculine values to cloud their thinking. And they've adapted or they've morphed into something that they think society wants them to be, but the results are not positive whatsoever. You know, the outcome is terrible. So I could probably go down a very, very lengthy rabbit hole as far as that's concerned, and, you know, maybe Cheyenne and I'll talk about that when he comes on the podcast. But you know, I'm not saying that everybody needs to be Clint Eastwood, you know, or Arnold Schwarzenegger on Predator, but you know, I certainly think that. I think that you know, we need men to behave like men in this world, and as far as I'm concerned, you know, I have a view on how a man should behave, and that's what I aspire to do every single day of my life, and it's served me very well thus far. I've not you know, been involved in crime. I you know, don't think that any woman would ever be able to say that I've behaved inappropriately toward her, and I think that if more boys grew up thinking that way. I mean, a lot of those values were instilled to me by my granddad, who was, you know, about as manly as fucking man can get. I saw a photo of him a while back where he must have been in his mid-60s, and the guy was doing a fucking pistol squat. You know, pistol squat, for those that don't know, look it up. It's like a one-legged squat. I can't do one, and I'm 42. So, you know, he had a very kind of staunch view on life. And I inherited a lot of that thinking from him. Maybe I didn't realize it at the time, but as I've grown older and I've reflected on it, I definitely know where a lot of those values came from. But anyway, I think, folks, that wraps up the news for this week. That also brings us to the end of another episode of Into the Necrosphere. Thank you so much for sticking around until the very end if you have done so. Next week, I'm back with Keith Rich of Druids. We'll also do a roundup of all of the best releases out in October. We'll do some news, we'll talk some shit, and we'll have us a grand old time. So be back next Tuesday. I was going to play out with a track off of the off of the Dark Throne classic Panzerfaust, which my man Mike Scondotto spoke about as his number one pick for favorite black metal release of the 1990s. However, Necromaniacs actually did that on their past episode. So without wanting to repeat, I am going back into my own archives, playing one of my favorite songs off of Panzer Division Marduk. One of the few records, like I said, where Legion's voice doesn't actually annoy me. I think Panzer Division is just an absolutely flawless record, as I mentioned before. If you want a great example of what a black metal beatdown sounds like, you will get very few better than this one. But as I ride off into the sunset with that black metal masterclass about to play, I want to say I hope that you guys are all safe, healthy, and I will see all of you bad motherfuckers again next Tuesday.
got to be